Should I start the recording now?
Yeah.
I take that as a yes. Yeah. Not good at judging inflection.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a mystery.
Is it recording?
It is recording, yes.
Have you tried the recording service?
Where is it?
I don't know. There's a start recording on the menu.
Yeah, I know I saw that, but I think it's you got to load one of their packages. It's different, and then you got to find a vendor. You know.
Oh, okay.
So no different than Zoom crap. If you want to do your independent stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but once you started, it keeps popping up these orange recording fails to start.
Is that Tom?
Yes, it is.
Okay, Tom. Huh.
I'm using a Chromebook Plus at this point.
Okay. Gee, I don't remember how to do anything on this darn thing.
Does that make it better or worse than Zoom?
It makes it better. Okay.
Ignorance is bliss, huh?
Yeah, I've been blissful all day, all week, and this is February, right? Okay. Tom, go ahead and put your name in. Go to the lower right corner and
Okay.
buttons, and then settings in the middle of the pop-up menu, and then you can, when the settings come up in your profile, you put your name in. Or I think if you go to the open the chat.
Here it is.
Yeah.
Click on your picture. It'll let you rename.
We'll get something.
Huh.
Uh-oh. I don't have to use a password or anything, do I?
No.
No. Did it come through okay? No.
It sometimes takes a minute. Yeah.
See if that works. Yep, there we go.
Yay. Tom, is it you that used to do a key business?
Yeah.
Okay. You still doing that? Or I'm just curious.
Part-time a little bit. I'm kind of on call because of the COVID-19. I've been mostly working from home. They'll bring me special projects to key up.
Yeah.
And I'll do it there. I just got my first shot Saturday, so
yeah,
that's good. I may do more after that, but you know, I need to be cautious with both my wife and my daughter and grandkids.
You don't want to give it to anybody. That's the reason I haven't visited my grandkids out in Vegas. I just don't want to take anything out to them. I mean, you know, it'd be bad enough if I got sick or whatever, but I didn't want to take anything to them.
Nope.
Don't want to do
And,
that.
I was fortunate. This is a good story. I was able to get the shot Saturday. Our next door neighbor told us about a site in Belleville.
Yeah.
I called up Friday about 2. They called me back about 4. Took my information and my wife's information. She's 70, and
Yeah.
got it set up, and we went in at 4 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah.
And it took about 20 minutes to get through.
Yeah.
The National Guard was really super. They had everything organized. You know, it was even a little overstaffed, but I was impressed with their efficiency.
Yeah. The major I used to work with, the National Guard, he said, National Guard, you can sleep well at night. They're on duty. Of course. Oh, shoot. Tyler, hey, welcome. Who else is here? We got 2 fellow Jitsers that you need to put their names in.
How do you put your name in? I forgot.
Go to the lower right-hand corner, the little 3 dots, more actions. Click on that. The menu pops up. And for settings, and then you can do the profile. So you put your name in there. And then that section where it says set your Gravatar email, you don't bother with that unless you go through the process of setting up an avatar, and then you connect to this one site out wherever, and you upload to there, and it's more complicated than it's worth. I think.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't seem to work anymore.
May not. You know, who knows? Steve Gomez. I thought I recognized that face. I tell you, without the clipboard walking around, I can't remember hardly anybody anymore.
It's a sign of old age.
Huh? Old? Hell, I'm older than dirt.
Yeah, but I'm older than you.
Well, see. I used to tell my son that I was older than dirt, and he had 2 friends. One was named Fire, and another was named Wheel. Oh, shoot. Oh, boy.
So, Stan, are we supposed to mute ourselves and take off the picture, or does it make any difference?
Hell, who knows? It's what you prefer. I mean, you have obviously have a face made for radio, so it's your choice.
Are you talking about yourself here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely is.
Yeah.
I think all of us fall into that category.
Yeah.
Even Lee.
Oh, my. I'm starting to think Lee's a young man in the group.
He is.
Or is Tyler? Tyler might be the
Tyler.
youngest.
Tyler's definitely the youngest.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to be 76 next month.
Well, congratulations.
Oh, God, you got me beat. That's a first.
Yeah. Shoot, oh my, I'm only 72, so.
Oh,
You're still moving. That's the important part.
Yeah.
only
So
barely.
yeah. I tell you, I'm moving around a lot better than my younger brother. And of course, he got exposed to a lot of Agent Orange when he's in Nam. I didn't. Well, I don't know. I was in Nam. I didn't know whether I got any exposure or not. And I just haven't bothered going to the VA at all.
Well, does anybody know for sure what Agent Orange? What is Agent Orange? Agent Orange tells me absolutely nothing.
Agent Orange was a defoliant chemical that was made by Monsanto. They sprayed it in the jungles, and it made all the leaves fall off the trees so that the Viet Cong couldn't hide.
Right, I remember that.
And it
was Agent Orange? What?
And it's a chemical, and it causes cancer. It causes all kinds of stuff.
I'm sure it's not good for you.
Yeah, not good at all. I mean, there's a whole list long as your arm of what it can cause problems. And they've gotten to the point where they say if you got these things, you qualify for Agent Orange. in the category of Agent Orange treatment. But my brother, you know, he says,
Oh, it's 24D and 245T. Okay. Yeah, that stuff's still in use, but the can says, don't get this on you,
yeah, well,
you know, and they strongly suggest a respirator, but those chemicals have been around forever.
oh yeah, well, everything else we use is been around forever. There's somebody here that's a picture's dark and it says fellow jitster. I can't see who that is.
I can't either.
Yeah, if you go into all the fellow jitsters, go to the move your mouse.
It's Chris Bickhouse. He just changed it. He just added his name.
Oh, there's another one there.
Ah, that guy's got a camera.
Mm-hmm. Whatever. Oh my. Steve Gomez, Joe B. Nice doggy.
My dog.
Yeah.
I always wondered, the defoliant, it's just a herbicide. It just kills everything.
Yeah, including the people.
That's why I use it out here. I've got a sprayer full of it. Well, I will as soon as it falls out.
Well, and it's like anything else. Some people are more affected by it than others.
Well, part of the problem in Vietnam was they didn't tell anybody how to use the stuff. So,
well, they just flew over with airplanes and just dumped it on the trees.
Well, that wasn't even the worst part. I've seen photographs where they're loading the aircraft, tanking them up.
Yeah, I got a cousin.
Everybody was just swimming in that stuff.
Yeah,
it's a milky white liquid. I got some if you want to see it.
No,
and, you mix with water, it's a milky white liquid.
Yeah,
and they've got the Herkies sitting there and got the spray booms on them, and there's just a freaking lake of this stuff everywhere. They must not. I'm just flabbergasted that nobody ever said don't touch that stuff.
Well, I got a cousin. He said he was in Nam, and they used to dump that stuff all the time out of the airplane. He would load it off and on the airplane, but he was never on any manifest that showed he was even on the doggone planes because he was flying for no such agency.
Yeah. Okay.
Whatever the hell they called them back then.
Yeah.
And so, whatever.
Boy, that's
good. But hell, he's a year older than I am, and he's still kicking. But he's got problems too,
Yeah. Well, it says it's got traces of dioxin, but the interesting thing about dioxin, remember Times Beach?
Yeah, oh yeah.
We had.
Oh yeah, Ed! Yay, Ed Holland is here.
There you go.
Ed, you can turn your camera off.
How do I do that? V?
V is for victory. Yes. There you go. Thank you.
But yeah, we used to. Oh, who was that guy that was hauling that dioxin all the time? That waste oil hauler.
Oh,
Russell Bliss.
Bliss, yes, that's exactly right. When I worked at the brass mill, we used to have Bliss come out. This was back in the 70s, and they would pump out tanks of waste oil. We didn't have any dioxin as far as I know. But we would pump out tanks of waste oil, that accumulate under the mill or the various machinery. And the way these guys would tell what it was, I swear to God, I stood there and watched them do it. I said, what is that stuff? He goes, he dips a finger in it and puts it on his tongue. Taste it.
Yeah.
And he'd say, all right, that's for tank number 3, because their tanks had, their trucks had multiple tanks on it, so they could separate stuff. And I'm thinking, these guys are still alive.
Like I said, some people is affected by this. A cousin of mine, her husband sprayed the stuff all around the house every year. She died from the cancer, and he's still kicking, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think one of the things that bothers me is I don't think anybody knows for sure, you know, provably what exactly, you know, if I get cancer, what exactly caused it?
well,
That money you can't find out.
I talked to the oncologist, and he said the problem is there's like 350 different kinds of cancer.
That's
know.
probably a low estimate, but yeah, my oncologist
You know.
said the same thing.
Yeah, and it's just there's just so many different kinds. You don't, you know, so they could do research on one kind, and maybe they could figure out how to treat that and eliminate it. And then they got another 349 or 48 to go to.
Yeah, it's just an insoluble problem.
Right.
There's two more fellow jitsters.
Yeah.
How the heck could somebody join the Zoom SLUUG main, Stan?
Say again.
I just got an email that somebody has joined the Zoom meeting. Sean, somebody.
Oh, can you get
No.
back to them and tell them where to go? You know how to get here?
Well, let me see if I can.
Yeah, just
Might be nice.
easy. Oh, the problem with Zoom is that if you set it up on your calendar, the damn thing pops up with last month's thing on your calendar.
Oh,
And a lot of people have done that. And another reason I hate, I'll be honest, I hate Zoom. I really do.
yeah, my grandson is using something like that.
How do you really feel about it, Stan?
Yeah.
Let me mute myself while I rant here, okay?
Well, what was the last passcode for Zoom SLUUG main?
I have no idea. I'd have to go root back through my Gmail.
Stan?
The passcode? No, the URL is nyx.omnitech.
No. Never mind.
There's no password. I didn't put a password on this session.
I didn't ask about this session. I asked about the last Zoom.
Oh, the last Zoom, it was the SLUUG, not SLUUG, STLUG 2021.
Okay.
I do believe.
See, now you can remember that and I can't. That proves how young you are.
Well, the problem is I remember so many things. The problem is I pick out the right one.
Understand that. Understand that.
Stanford, welcome.
You know, I thought that was going to be painful, but it was not.
What would be painful?
Well,
Sure.
switching from Zoom to Jitsi, now I got to figure out where to click and poke and silence and mute. And
Oh, yeah.
Well, if V will turn off your video or toggle your video, and I think M will mute or unmute. Okay. We still have one fellow
Yeah.
Jitster.
M toggles the audio on and off.
you're right, V and M. I am well trained now.
Yes.
My grandson's got my only computer with a camera on it. Nobody
That's-
wants to see my ugly face.
Gary
What are
showed
the
up.
pros and cons? What are the pros and cons of turning off your video?
All right, who is that? The pros and cons of turning off the video. It's a little bit lower video bandwidth use, although it's not as much as you think it would. You got to go in and do some little more technical stuff on your icon up at the up in the left-hand corner of your picture. It's got this little thing that says whether or not you got a good connection or whatever. When that pops up, it gives a menu, and you go to the show more. No, that's not it either. I forget.
In other I'm
It's
not
co-
producing video, then the bandwidth leaving my house is smaller.
That's true.
Well, that would make sense.
Which means if
Yeah.
you're on AT&T, it might make it usable.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I don't know. The video doesn't seem to. I haven't got my overall thing up yet to show me how much everybody's using. But oh, wait a minute! I'm running it through this computer. I can run it. Okay.
Well, Steve, instead of futzing around, why don't you get your screen share going so you can take the helm?
Okay. How do I share a screen?
You hit the button that says share screen.
Smart aleck.
And here we are at the learning experience of being
Really?
meetings.
Well, I remember how to do that on the other one.
Bottom left, second button.
There we are.
Okay, we've got 1, 2, 3 people in that have not set their name yet. We are now recording this session, by the way. Anonymous Coward is recording. I hope it's recording. Let me make sure it's recording. It looks like it's recording.
We want to stop and play it back?
Well, oh, what the hell? Why bother?
Steve,
Sean.
bump that
How do you remind me? How do you set your name, please?
Go down to the right-hand corner where the 3 dots are, pop up a menu, and there's got settings, and the settings comes up in the middle entry profile will allow you to put your name in.
Thank you.
Don't bother with the thing that talks about email, because that's for the avatar, which we don't. Apparently it's not working anymore. Or maybe it is.
Hey, Steve,
Yes, sir.
bump that font a couple times.
Oh, the font? All right, hang on.
Yeah, it's way too small for a screen session like this.
All right.
Control plus doesn't work in your fancy EMACS?
How's that?
There you go. Much better.
Is that big enough so that you can see it, Lee?
Well, I'm sure I'm the only one talking, but it looks good.
Hang on. I'm just resized. The screen just jumped big. Okay, there we go. Now,
And my old eyes are now much happier there, Sonny.
yeah, really. Let's see what the speed bar does with it. Well, that don't look bad. So, go ahead and start.
Sure.
Uh-oh, somebody's got a microphone and a speaker open at the same time.
I think that was Gary. He's since muted himself.
Ah, okay. That's interesting because I have my speakers aren't making any sound. Oh, well, that's good.
As long as we can hear you.
This I always be sound like this one I talk.
You sound like a science fiction person thing.
How long did you have to practice that, Gary?
Okay, enough of this messing around. Let's get to the
All right.
tutorial basic session by Steve Stegman. Take it, Steve.
Ta-da! All right. As soon as I say the word EMACS, Lee's going to scream, control key, or something like that. But, at any rate, somebody was asking about an editor having a way to display a file tree, directory tree. And I'm sure a lot of editors do. EMACS has had one for at least it's been part of the standard distribution for 10 years. That probably means it was available for 5 years before that, because the stuff usually has to get pretty old before they put it in the standard distribution. They seem to have a thing about distributing crap code. They don't seem to like that. So, you know, if you come up with a great idea and submit it, it won't show up tomorrow. It'll first show up as you can add this to your copy of EMACS if you want to, but it's on you. And eventually, once everybody's kind of beat it into submission, you know, it'll show up. And so the way you run the SpeedBar is you go down to the command line, and the way you do that is that, do you see that command line down at the bottom, down here now? At the bottom of the EMACS window? That's just escape X. That brings you to that, okay? So if you say escape X, there you are. And you can type in, EMACS has got, right now it's got, I don't know, it's just usually like, my version of EMACS usually has about 2,500 commands live at any given time. A lot of which I wrote for my own personal use. Okay. So anyway, you just type SpeedBar down there in the command line. Somebody asking a question? Okay, not. And what you see over here is just all sorts of junk on this computer. And if I go to desktop, to OwnCloud, and here's the SpeedBar presentation. And when I tapped on that folder instead of on the...
Excuse me, Steve?
Go ahead.
This may be a personal problem, but I still have the opening EMACS screen laying on top of your SpeedBar screen. Anyone else seeing it that way?
Nope.
No, a SpeedBar screen it's a totally separate frame. You can move it anywhere you want.
It's that short. Okay, I didn't realize it was that narrow. And
oh yeah,
the other screen
was
playing it. Okay,
you know, you can make it wide if you want, but there's no real.
Okay.
Most of the time, there's no need to have it that wide, but it is. You can do it if you like it. Okay, so what you typically see is my home directory, and if I click on this, I'll jump directly back to the home directory. Now, come back down here, scroll that back to the top. That's one thing that I'm not sure works exactly the way I would like to have it work, but oh well. And I've got some code in here. Let's see, I'll look into this. If I open this one. Now you see this, boom, there it is. It's an ODT file. It's a LibreOffice file, and it'll display it. It runs out and grabs something to display that file, and then puts it in a buffer and shows it here. It'll do JPEGs, PDFs, all kinds of stuff. I mean, you can't interact with it. It's just, think of it as just a photograph of it, but you know. It's something that, you know, if you're looking through files, you're wondering, what is that? You know, it's useful for that. We've got a C++ example. These are all the file names and folder names. Okay. Okay, if we go through here and we click all these icons, and I'll leave out the make file. You don't want to go there. That's ugly. But what's happening, you notice it takes a split second for this thing to come up, to respond. What it's doing, it's running a tags analysis on this file and seeing what kind of tags are in there. Tags are things like global variables, class names, you know, just all kinds of stuff. Go ahead.
This is Stan.
Yeah.
Are those tags like the VI Vim tags kind of thing?
I think they're very similar.
Thank you.
I used to use, I did almost everything I did in EMACS was done originally in VI. VI has power that most people have no clue is out there. But I like this one better, so there's that. To get into Java, look at the source code. You can see that, like this one. All right, there's your main Java public static void main, and here's a function. Where's it at? There we go. It'll show you. And if I click on that, of course, it'll show you the mating thing. And if there is no mating thing, it'll turn purple and flash at you.
When you say mating thing, you mean like a corresponding
Bracket.
symbol?
Yeah,
Bracket.
corresponding bracket. It works on parens, brackets, all kinds of, the curly braces, I should say. I don't think it works on square brackets. You could go in and change it to work on square brackets because all that code is available and comes with it. But, if you want to, fine. If you don't, fine. Don't. But, so that's basically what it does. If you look at, this is the main, I look at the main for that C++ program. See here, I've got 3 include files, which are here. And I look at this one, there's a class, DS array, and the file is, not too surprisingly, DS array I, so it's an integer array. This is some code I wrote years ago. I don't remember. I snatched it out of another folder and got rid of all the stuff I didn't want to see. There's an array of a doubly subscripted array of doubles. C doesn't have a native doubly subscripted array. You have to roll your own. That's an advantage and a disadvantage of C. You roll your own so you know exactly what code's in there and exactly how it's going to act. And since a C compiler rarely surprises you, you know what you're going to get. This kind of thought process was important when I was writing code for the Defense Department, because they don't want, if you're writing code that's going to shoot rockets at somebody or drop bombs on somebody, they don't want you to include a ton of Java libs or C libs either, other than the standard ones. They just say, well, we don't know what's in there. How do we know absolutely what it's going to do? And you don't. Unless you can get to the source code and rebuild it, you have no idea what's in there. So anyway, it's just a comment about software. But that's really about all there is to this thing. It's just that simple. If I want to go look at this, let's see. Here we go. This is an artifact from NetBeans.
Quick question.
Go.
Got a quick question.
Sure.
Some of that stuff, I've got color blindness. What do you do if you want to change the coloring? Is that easy to do?
Well, yeah, you can change the color of the background. The default background is white, blinding white, so I don't use it. And you can change the color of the foreground, the text. Can you see the difference between this one and this one, that they're different colors?
Well, I see one's white. You just put white on green. Now the one's flashing yellow on the blue background.
Yeah, it's a navy blue background. That's just the way I've got it set. You can set that to any color that your computer can display. So yeah, you can. It would be a good idea to set it for, whatever suited your color blindness.
Are there standard packages for color blindness?
I've never looked, Stan. Honestly, I've never looked.
But
everybody's not colorblind the same way, are they?
No, there's quite a bit of difference. Quite a bit of difference.
The colors on the screen are essentially your choice over the years. You've developed your own choice of the screen. Okay.
Yeah, I found that looking at this dark blue screen, for 8-10 hours a day, which is what I did for many years, I found that was the most restful color for my eyes.
Can you pull up your color scheme?
Let's see. See if I can remember this. No.
It's something I haven't touched in so many years. I don't remember what I did with it.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay, understand that.
Hang on. I'm just looking it up here. I'm sure it will. Oh, jeez. Hang on. This is the Lisp code. So you can see all these commands here, set
okay.
background color, you know, SS
Okay.
display color. Ah, okay. There you go.
Okay.
It's got all those colors. Hopefully somewhere in there you'll find some colors that, you know, will work with your version of color blindness. Any of those colors stand out as they go by?
Well, it's not only the colors; it's the items that are you've chosen your variables of certain color and your
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's all settable. I didn't always, let's just put it this way. I haven't always done that, but yeah, you sure could.
Okay. Does this have like a Vim's got the Vim RC that you can go into and set it, you know, point it at the color scheme you want. Does this have
Sure.
like a Vim RC when you get in?
Yeah. The file that it will always load when it starts is .emacs. It's a
Okay.
hidden file, .emacs, and it always loads that. And let's see. Oh, Java. There we go. .emacs. This is the file.
Ah, okay.
And, oh God, I've been using this since '88. Good grief. This is all Lisp code, but in this file, I can say load custom settings. You know, that changes all kinds of stuff. You can customize EMACS. It can be a very daunting. Let's see. Now you go into a customized buffer. You go in here and you can say text, and you know.
Can you customize Emacs to the point where it acts like an editor? Oh, never mind.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. I bet if I worked at it, I could make it look like Vim. I have no real incentive to do that unless you want to pay me to do that.
Actually, there is a Vim mode in Emacs that allows you to use the Vim navigation keys instead of the Emacs navigation keys.
Oh, really? Do you know what the name of it is?
Start typing, do meta X Vim mode.
I think it's called evil mode.
Ah,
I'm not joking.
No?
That's what it's called, evil mode.
no, there's no evil mode here.
Is
Do an
there
apropos on the word mode.
is there a man page for
There's
EMACS?
a man page. The thing has got info in it. This is the top of the info. Oh, and yeah, and here's SpeedBar. It's talking to you about. Holy mackerel! There's stuff in here I never even heard of. It's got a TROF mode. Yikes! This thing has been around. I've been using it since 88, and it was version 13 at the time, and it's now version, I think it's on 27. I've only got 25. And pretty much everything that anybody ever built in is still there. ED, what's that? The GNU line editor. Holy crap. Yeah, this is an old, that must be old. Gee whiz. Jeez. Jeez. Yeah, but you can go through the info file. Info is an actual. Let's see. Yeah. Let's see. I've forgotten what some of these commands are. It's been so long. Okay, this is the top of the info. Info is actually has been broken out and is available as a separate application. It's sort of like hypertext but older, and you can build manuals for it. It's just a ridiculous. MS Tools, utilities to access DOS disks in Unix. New nano editor. Good grief. Yeah, it's.
Damn thing.
I wonder what that is. Never tried it. There's so much stuff in here. And, I used to run it 8-9 hours a day, every day of the week when I was coding all the time. But I don't do that much anymore.
Well, there's a guy who has a DistroTube. If you go to YouTube, there's a guy who has his own thing, DistroTube. He's got a whole bunch of things on EMACS.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's got like the Doom EMACS.
Damn it.
Getting started with EMACS. Learning the basics of EMACS, stuff like that. So if you just do...
Yeah, let's take a look at this here.
DistroTube EMACS. It's on YouTube. It's his channel. He puts out something about every other day on some topic, and he switches back and forth between Vim and EMACS.
Hey, Stan, your mic is open.
Yeah, I was going to mention none of his expletives were deleted.
But Stan's?
That's correct.
I don't even hear them anymore. Learning the basics of EMACS.
EMACS is so much more than a text editor, but I don't think enough people really focus on EMACS, the text editor. So today I'm going to go over the basics of EMACS as a text editor, such as navigating around in EMACS.
So yeah, I guess I never really thought about it, but yeah, there's a tutorial built into EMACS too. It's so old that you have to set your window to display 23 lines of text to make the instructions work. Oh God, what's it called? I could find it, but yeah, it's based on an old VT220. So the whole thing is set up for a VT220, and it's actually pretty good. It'll teach you to move around, what keys move around, all that kind of stuff, and teach you to keep your left pinky finger on the control key a lot of times. But if you look at Vim or VI, the only real advantage they have is they come loaded automatically with the distros. And this runs fine if you're logged in with a terminal to a machine that has EMACS, but there's no X connection. That's fine. It runs fine. Not a problem. Let's see. Where is my? Let's see. Let's go here. SSH to Reynolds. Boom. There's EMACS. Now, when you run, if you don't, now SpeedBar doesn't work in the non-X version of EMACS. Huh. It does notice that much. It notices the scroll wheel. Interesting. But here, all the commands are there. And 2019. Oops. Zero. Can't do that. Then it'll show you all the lines down here. Open a second window, and here's all the lines that are. Yeah, you have to go over to the. There are keys to switch back and forth from one window to another, and just all kinds of stuff. Really, kind of amazing amount of stuff that's in here. Back in the VT220 days, we used to.
Once you learn how to use EMACS properly, you never have to touch the mouse.
Exactly. And what you'll find is that once you get good at it, you can actually work faster without the mouse, because your hands never leave the keyboard, unless you need to scratch, of course. What was I going to look at? I have no idea. I can't remember the name of the EMACS tutorial. Oh well. It's easy to look up if you want. There's another nice thing. If you go on the web and ask about EMACS, you'll get just an enormous pile of responses from people. But anyway, I think that's about it for SpeedBar.
All righty. Let's see.
So-
I guess does anybody have any more questions? Anything about SpeedBar itself? I mean, we'll have a general Q&A in a minute, but
Yeah, I got a quick question.
go.
Shoot.
You said you wrote a bunch of stuff yourself. What wrote it in what
Lisp.
scripting language?
Lisp.
Lisp. Okay.
Yep. Let's see. Oh God, I want to go there. Okay, this is Lisp. This little 3-line thing here is how you. Write a function.
Okay.
You say define a function name. I can't remember what arg does. And you have to tell it if it's going to be run interactively from a keyboard, you have to put that line in. And this one, what this does, it's set font. It goes and loads some custom settings that I built at some point. Don't ask me what that specific file does. I have no idea at this point. I probably wrote that 15 years ago. But EMACS at its base is a C compiler. It's a very small one. And then it implements EMACS Lisp. And all the actual functions of EMACS that you would ever actually run are written in EMACS Lisp. And if you've got an editor that understands Lisp, it ain't so bad. what most people do with Lisp is they start piling that stuff on one line, and boy, you talk about lost in stupid parentheses. Woo. So, any other questions? If no other questions, I guess we're about done here.
This is Stan. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
I found it very interesting that when you put the mouse over those entries, the little files, that it popped up and showed the file permissions and so forth. That besides the other window that you went in. So
I don't remember how it did. I don't remember that doing that. But oh, I see. Yeah, it's that pop-up window.
yeah, right there, directories with a D.
Yeah, you leave it. Yeah, you leave it on there for a second, and it pops that up.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, later on, you showed how you went into the file structure and you showed the standard listing, and it showed the permissions. But that's kind of would be kind of handy to show the permissions.
Yeah.
As you go along.
Yeah, and it also gives you the full path. That path that you see there, that's the same path you'll get by invoking real path. Which, if you got files on a file server someplace, very quickly you love to have real path, because if you're working with file servers, especially if you got a couple of them, or God knows a dozen of them if you're working at a company, at some point you kind of lose track of where's my file at actually. And that will, of course, real path is a great way to do that, and this actually gives the same thing.
Another question: do you know offhand if this stuff runs on a Windows system or Apple system?
Yes, I've used it on a Windows system for years. It's in once you're in EMACS, it's indistinguishable, because remember, when you port it to Windows, somebody ported a small C compiler and implemented EMACS Lisp. But once they've got that small C compiler ported, you're pretty much done. You pretty much got the whole thing ported. That's really about all there is to it.
I've always read that EMACS was good in the fact that as you were developing code, it acted as a what do you call it, an IDE, where it shows you the error codes and you could jump right to the lines and so forth.
Yes, exactly. It's been years since I've done it, but if you have, if you were to go into this C++, come on, go here, and let's see, I don't know if I can remember how to do it.
What do you want to do?
Make. What's the default make in there? No target specified. All right. Well, let's try make all.
It's really not necessary. The fact that you can do it, I would imagine if you got knee deep into it, that you would eventually learn.
Yeah, it works pretty much exactly like a modern IDE. You have your source code up here on the screen. This would be on the screen, and it would pop up it would open another window, and in that other window it would say, it's just a compiler output, okay, standard compiler output, and it would say, file name XYZ, line 37. Error, whatever, and you just go click on that, and it'll open the file that contains that line and go right to it.
Edit the make file.
Oh God, you don't want to look at this make file.
Yes, I do. I want to see what targets are available.
All right. Well, wait a minute. You want to do that? Just ask for a tag. Here's the targets that are available.
Okay, so you make test then. I mean, and so now instead of typing make-k, type make test. Or.
All right, let's go back to the file. I'm getting lost. I'm too old for this noise.
What did you do? You said, what did you do the last time? You said compile and it said make dash K nothing to do. And
Yeah. I forget how to give it the name of a target.
I mean, maybe, I mean, you're trying to do edit commands. How about meta bang, and then type make
Not a bad.
alt exclamation
Wait a minute.
control G
Control
alt
G.
exclamation meta exclamation whatever, you know, escape exclamation. You did escape one. You didn't hit the
Escape exclamation. Oh, shell command. Yeah.
now type
Here-
make. Yeah, and so there's your. So it went out to a shell and ran make, and here's all of your errors.
Yeah. The thing is, it didn't parse this output because you didn't execute it from internally. When you say,
Okay, my mistake.
well, you can say man ls, and here's the ls man page. Okay, you can execute any shell command in there. If you've got a shell command that you don't know how much output it's going to generate, a lot of times it's good to do it this way because EMACS will swallow input like that until your computer runs out of memory, actually. And then, of course, the whole thing barfs. You know, so you... oops. Yeah, all right. So, yeah, there's just, let's see, undo. Okay. Yeah, there's just, I mean, I've written commands in here to, when I was working at Northrop, I wrote commands to, we were building model databases for war games. And one of the problems is one of the programs had everything in latitude, longitude, degrees, minutes, seconds, and the next program wanted decimal degrees. Well, so I wrote a little EMACS macro to make that conversion. So then all you do is you go in and wherever you find one, you just, I set it with a function key and you put your cursor on the lat long and hit the function key and it would convert it, from degrees, minutes, seconds to decimal degrees. It can do math. The math is all in memory, so it's arbitrary precision. So if you want to go looking for a Merced prime, you can do that too. Although I guess
All righty.
that work's all been done by now. So, but I mean, you can.
Okay.
It can represent.
I think we've done
much larger
a nice tour of SpeedBar here, and
Yeah.
I'm sure some of us will want to play with it some more and give it some trials. So there is, of course, our discuss list, and for those of you who play with it, have more questions, have thoughts on what could be done or how something could be done, ask it and discuss. And I'm sure Steve and the other folks here who have some familiarity will try and help us out on the discuss mailing list. So with that, I think we're going to move on, unless there's an immediate pressing thing we need to address here on EMACS.
Gary, I think I unshared my screen. Is that correct?
I still see it.
You do.
I do.
I don't. Well, then probably
No,
everybody else.
I do not see it anymore, so it's unshared.
Okay, it's just
Oh, okay.
now that Stan started talking.
Yeah, I just went to the share thing and went cancel.
Okay. All right. Well, very good. That was Steve Stegman. Thank you very much, Steve. Steve's been a longtime member of our group. He's on the board of directors, and he's been at a number of different employers, including good old Mac here in St. Louis, if I remember right. And
Yep. He was there for a while.
So, for a while, he was part of SLUUG East Coast Division. He and Newton Love were both out in Annapolis, Maryland, and they would participate with us from Annapolis on occasion. So that was probably, you guys were probably the pioneers of coming to the meeting by remote connections. So
Yeah, we used it. It was called telephone in those days.
So, all righty. Well, once again, thank you very, very much, Steve. We really
right.
appreciate it. And I'm Gary Meyer. If you're trying to figure out which one of the little icons on your screen is winking at the moment, for those of you who might be new to the group, there's a couple of names that I don't recognize on the list. Actually, more than a couple. And
who says fellow Jitser?
Actually, I think there's 4 fellow Jitsus on there who haven't filled in their names. So yeah, we always like to see the names just so that we got some idea of who you might be. But if you want to be anonymous, that's okay too.
Well,
okay.
We have one anonymous. He's recording the session right now.
Well, that's anonymous coward.
Yeah, well, that's true.
But anyway, if some of you don't want to be anonymous coward, and if you would like to let us know if this is your first time here or one of your first times here at our group, love for you to just turn on your microphone for a second or put it in the chat and just tell us if you're local here in St. Louis or if you want to just tell us who you are or where you're from. We'd love just to get to meet you. So. Also, I see Stanford. I think you were saying you'd like to say something. So, Stanford, hit your mic.
Am I on mute now, or do I have to?
You are talking.
We can hear you.
Okay. Was that because I raised my hand and lowered it, or what happened?
I saw the little flag come up saying you would like to speak.
Or when are you going to call? When are you going to ask for call for help or whatever you were saying? Is that next or?
That's coming right up.
I'll wait.
Okay. For the sake of the people who haven't been with us for a while, or we do the Oreo cookie version of a meeting. We start out with the basic session, the tutorial. That's what Steve just did. We end the meeting with another formal set presentation, so-called main talk. And in between, that gooey, gushy middle, is where we take care of a number of other odds and ends things. One of those will be general Q&A. One of those will be announcements. So there may be just some interesting chit-chat going on in there. Tonight, we have something special that we only do once a year. It just happens that this is election night, and so that will no doubt cause some consternation. I mean, controversy. I mean, that'll be a pleasant experience. So anyway, those will be the 3 things we take care of. That could take 15 to 20 minutes. Those 3 things. So I'm going to move on with them, and we'll do the election part as the 3rd and last of those segments. And for those of you who are just bored senseless by that, fine. That'll give you a chance to go take a 5-minute bio break, and then you can rejoin us for the main talk. So,
it shouldn't take us 5 minutes.
No, it shouldn't. It should not. So, but
well, there's a joke there, but I'm going to leave it go.
We found there can be a real danger to bringing in national politics into this.
Oh, that wasn't going to have anything to do with national politics.
Okay. Okay, so with that, by way of announcements, let's see. Next Thursday is the monthly St. Louis Linux Users Group meeting. The Linux Users Group is just another name for this same group.
It's not the same group, Gary. Not the same.
Well, okay, an interlock group of people. Let's put it that way. So, but the speaker for next Thursday is who is it? I'm drawing a blank.
It's Susie.
Oh, yes. Michael Carrington. He's an engineer at SUSE. Michael spoke to us, I believe, just about a year ago. I think it was last February. and then he also spoke to us about 6-8 months before that. And so he's coming back, and the highlight of his talk will probably be about SUSE bought a company called
Something Labs.
Rancher Labs. They built a nice Kubernetes system for rapidly deploying containers. And so Michael says it's going to change the way SUSE does things. And so he's all excited about it. So fill us in on that, plus whatever other odds and ends that SUSE would like us to know. So that's next Thursday, 6:30. And be the same type of thing. We'll do it in Jitsi Zoom, and that log information will be available the day of, maybe the night before. So let's see, other announcements. Stan, are there any other changes in our meeting schedule?
Not that I can think of. We always could use volunteers to help, but that's another story. Okay. Before we go into the annual meeting, we'd kind of like to discuss what somebody may want to bring up and vote for. This time around, we need to kind of approve the process that we've done for the election this year because of the lock-in situation. It's kind of hard for us all to meet together, if you noticed. And so what we're going to do is stick with our absentee ballot format. If you want to see what the ballot looks like, you can go to the website. And I'll pipe it into the chat room. I should have done this.
Put it up on your screen and share your screen.
Well, I want to do that too. Give me a minute.
Okay.
I'm getting older here by the minute, and okay, and let's see got to remember which machine I've got going here. Share button. Which one is that? That's the green one. Share my screen. Okay.
While Stan's working on that, let's see, I'll mention a couple other odds and ends. And Stan, you just let me know if you're ready on something. So we frequently point out things on the calendar, and I'm not going to belabor that tonight, but I'm just going to quickly verbally run through some. And I like history. I used to write history in the paper, so but kind of going back in time here. So it's the 10th anniversary this month, and it's on the calendar if you want to look up the details. There's usually little stories that go with this, but 10 years ago, Nokia decided to stop using its own operating system on their cell phones, and they were going to use that newfangled Microsoft Windows operating system for cell phones. Boy, was that ever a great idea for Nokia. Let's see. Also, 10 years ago, the last of the IPv4 addresses were allocated, and that was going to be a major crisis. Somehow we've avoided it for the last 10 years, but no more IPv4s. 20 years ago is the anniversary of Mac OS X coming out. Of course, the big thing about that was Mac OS X is based on BSD Unix, and it's now many people are running BSD on their laptops and their desktops at home and don't realize it. So, 30 years ago, Python and Java, both languages came out 30 years ago. And it's amazing. We think of Java as a oldie and goodie, and Python is a new upcomer, but they're both the same age. 55 years ago, 2 Gemini astronauts crashed into McDonnell Douglas Building 101 up at Lambert Airport. The 2 astronauts died in the crash. There were 17 McDonnell Douglas employees who were badly injured. And it's an unfortunate thing, but it's kind of a little event that's not been noted very often here in St. Louis. So
When did that happen, Gary?
55 years ago. So figure back, probably what, 1965 maybe?
Something like that, yeah.
And it's I believe it's the 28th of this month is when it happened. So if you look on the calendar, it gives their names and basically the scenario of what happened. And the backup crew was flying the plane right behind them, and they pulled up just in time. So the backup crew survived, and they were the ones who flew the mission. So
We have a calendar?
we do.
Okay, I believe I've got the ballot shared.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, it's on my screen.
Okay.
All right. Stan, you want to tell us about it?
Calendar.
Say again.
You want to tell us about it?
On the ballot at the top there's got instructions on how to fill it out. Essentially, since it's going to be a mail-in ballot, you get an envelope, you put your name, return address up there, and it'd be nice to put a date on there too, because the post office doesn't postmark these envelopes anymore. And so, which gives you the opportunity, if you change your mind, you can send a second ballot. And when we go through the ballots, we throw away the older one if you happen to vote it twice. And since you put the ballot inside the envelope, and we separate it from the envelope so that it's a secret ballot. And we'd like you to print your name normally like you do when you attend the meeting. And we used to compare with the attendance sheets. But that's one of the reasons we like you to start putting your name in the meetups in Zoom or Jitsi or whatever, so we can start tracking who attended meetings. The requirement for voting is that you've attended 2 meetings during the calendar year, and we'd like you also to sign or initial the outside of the envelope like you would do on your attendance sheet. I used to walk around with a clipboard and have people sign in and so forth, and we would use those for validating your eligibility to vote. You can vote for the candidates of your choice from those listed on or you can write in a name and vote for somebody like that. You can write in we've got it set up so you can write in a candidate name for any position. You mark 1 vote for each section unless 2 votes are allowed in certain sections. Mark it with an X or a check mark, whatever. After you mark the ballot, you fold it up, put it in the envelope, put a stamp on it, and then you mail it to the address up at the top of the thing here. We have a post office box. We'd like you to vote before the end of the month so that we can count the votes before the next steering committee that's going to be in March. And that's when they'll be counted. Where am I here? Oh, anyway, the candidates currently, the board members are Dave Forrest, myself, Don Ellis, Lee Lambert, and Steve Stegman. The asterisks indicate the incumbents. In expiring terms are for 3 years. And the way it works out, you got 4 votes here. You can on the names that are candidates. You can write somebody in. You can give that person you write in. You can give them two votes, or you can give me 2 votes. I kind of like that. Or you can give everybody, or 4 people, you can give them 1 vote. Kind of spread it out. Whatever you want. It just doesn't make much difference. The candidates are Stanford Baldwin. He did not send me any Monopoly money, so I put his name on the ballot. James Conroy, Dave Forrest, an incumbent, Ken Johnson, Terry Linhart, Gary Meyer, and then myself. I am an incumbent. You don't have to vote for me. It really doesn't matter. But I like to vote that you vote for me as vice president. I'm an incumbent. I've been the vice president for about, 10, 15 years now. I like being vice president because that way I'm not the president.
And we actually think that the real reason is because Stan thinks this means he gets to preside over all of the vice. And so we'll let him continue to think that.
Also, the incumbent for the Linux users group is James Conroy. The other 2 groups that we have, the Slack meeting and the new LUG, are separate groups. They run their own situation independently. And somebody came up with the brilliant idea that we vote for who would be the chairperson of the St. Louis Unix users group. and James Conroy gracefully volunteered a number of years ago, and he's doing a pretty decent job. If you don't like what he's doing, you can vote for yourself or somebody else. There's a valid write-in slot right there. Anyway, you can vote early and you can vote often. So please do so.
Legal disclaimer is, to the best of our knowledge, our lawyer says that federal election laws do not apply, and therefore putting a $5 bill in the envelope along with your ballot will go a long way to getting your vote counted. Thank you.
So, before we have the annual meeting, we'd like to discuss. I'm proposing that we approve what was done by the steering committee. And a couple of months ago, we decided we would have to sidestep the actual requirements and of the how did we term it, Gary? I forget. We're gonna
suspend the rules as we had written them before.
Yeah, suspend the rules because we can't meet in person for this annual meeting. So we thought it would be a good idea, and we also told the election committee that do whatever you want for an election because we couldn't, we didn't know what to do. So
basically, this is the method that the election committee, which basically has been James and Stan, with a little bit of input from myself, has come up with. So if people have a major objection to doing it by this way, even though it's by U.S. mail,
please discuss it now.
Yeah. Tell us what if you don't like this, and we'll stop and come up with a different way. But
crickets. Okay.
Tell you what, we'll let you think about that, and you can bring it up before we get into the main talk again. But y'all percolate on that. We'll get back to it in a few minutes.
Well, you have no power over how I deploy my Linux boxes, so.
I didn't hear that. What?
You have no power over how I deploy my Linux boxes, so.
Yeah, there you go. All righty. Let's see. Stan, we got anything else to cover there?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. There'll be, like I say, we'll have an opportunity to revisit this again in a few minutes before we get into the main talk. We're about to do the general Q&A. First, there was something I wanted to mention at the as a follow-up to Steve's talk here on EMACS. And let me see if I can share my screen. There we go. And
we see that.
Screen? All right. Okay. So two intriguing things about Steve's talk. Since it was on EMACS, we wouldn't let Steve do this talk exactly a year ago, because a year ago it was the 100th anniversary of Bob Beamer's birthday. And Bob Beamer, he was basically the guy who created the editor, and not on Unix. He created it on GCOS, which, for those of you who remember, is actually the grandfather operating system of Unix. And so basically all the command line stuff that you see in Vim or VI is basically what Beamer did way back in those days. And then he continued on working for General Electric and then Honeywell and then some consultant companies, and had some things to do with the development of VI. And so, but he was here in St. Louis a number of times. He worked for a company in Manchester, and then he also did some work or did some consulting and stuff at St. Louis University. So, so he has a little bit of a St. Louis connection. So in deference to him last year, we didn't have a talk on EMACS on the month of his birthday. So the other thing is on Friday, this Friday, 2 days from now, now that we've all been indoctrinated and brought up to speed on SpeedBar, there is actually an online talk on EMACS in general and completion frameworks. It's being done by the San Francisco EMACS group. And yes, there is an EMACS group in San Francisco. So it's here on our calendar. And, so you can click on that and find out how to do the login and everything. It's on a YouTube channel. And the stuff for it is in GitHub repo already. So if you haven't had enough EMACS for tonight, Friday at noon is your time to do it. So lastly, before we do, and kind of beginning of general Q&A, another thing, it's an anniversary. It's the 100th anniversary of broadcast radio, at least west of the Mississippi. 100 years ago in April the 26th to be exact, St. Louis University put WEW radio on the air. It was the second broadcast license in the United States, first one west of the Mississippi. And St. Louis, you got out of the radio business in the late 50s, but WEW still exists as a radio station in St. Louis. And since it's its 100th anniversary, we may try and commemorate it. So I know there's a few ham radio people amongst our group, and if anybody else would like to get together with me and maybe form a little committee, and try and get some people down at St. Louis U interested in doing a little commemoration of the 100th anniversary. So contact me if you want to follow up on that. With that, general Q&A. You can ask a question about anything you want. Has a heck of a lot better chance of an answer if it has something to do with computers or Linux, Unix. So with that, anybody? Stanford, I think he said you had something. Stanford?
Question. I forget how it came to my attention recently that there was an AMC TV series called Halt and Catch Fire. And so a friend of mine's wife got me the first and second season on DVD for Christmas, and I've watched, it's 10 episodes per season, 40 episodes total. I've watched 7. It's a fictitious drama, but it kind of mirrors the invention of the compact portable computer. But since we just had an EMACS demonstration, the 5th episode is called Adventure. And what is it about? It's about the Colossal Cave adventure, which is simulated in EMACS. If you run MetaX Dunet for the dungeon, you can enter the Colossal Cave right there in EMACS. And you too can visit the Hall of Mists and the Hall of the Mountain King and work your magic. But in the episode, the programmer wants to decide who to hire and who to fire, so she loads Adventure on the mainframe, and the next morning she said who had to cheat to win, and those are the people she keeps, and fires everybody else.
I like it.
Other than borrowing my DVD set, I don't know where else you can watch it.
The county library might have copies. If not, we can request that they buy something. And I was told by one of the staff members, if 5 people ask for them to buy something, they will buy it. So.
Hey, Stanford, when you said stop and catch fire, I immediately thought of IBM 360 disk drives. Because if they had an emergency stop, it usually destroyed the disk drive.
Gary, can you stop sharing your screen, please? Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay, well,
Norm, go ahead.
I want to follow up on what Stan said.
I think
have
Norm was
requested-
trying to ask something too.
I follow up with what Stan said. I have requested stuff from the library, and they have got it. And they've got contact with other library systems. If they don't have it, they check with these other libraries first. And if they think it's worthwhile or they get enough requests, they will buy that periodical.
All righty, cool. Well, we've had a couple people on the chat room session who have figured out that they are neighbors living about 4 miles apart from each other, or different parts of the area. So that's always nice, is to find out where people are. As I say, for those of you who haven't been here for a while or first came, you're welcome, and certainly come back, speak up, and if there's other ideas for your talks in the future, or if you want to do a talk, or even if you don't want to do it, but you just have an idea, let us know, and we'll try and see if we can find somebody to speak on a topic. Now the scary part. And don't be scared, people. Don't be scared. It's time for our annual required corporate meeting. Yes, this has been known to take all of 16 seconds. Is that my record, Stan?
I believe so.
Okay.
Since I'm on the board of governors, I'll call the meeting, and I would like you to act as the chairman of the meeting and run it.
Okay.
Second.
There we go. And this year, it's not going to be an all-time record because I'm going to stick in a quickie extra, but it'll be fast. So in that case, we'll call the meeting to order at 7:40 p.m.
I'm calling the meeting to order.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the board's decision to suspend the election rules and conduct the election by extraordinary rules?
This is Stan. I so move.
Second.
I hear a motion in a second, and all in favor signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Three proponents no. The ayes have got it. So done. Okay.
I move we adjourn the meeting.
Do I hear a second?
Second, then we.
Okay. Any debate? Hearing none. All in favor signify by the usual sign.
Aye.
Three proponents no.
Aye.
Okay. We stand adjourned at 7:41:26. And for those of you who wonder why we go through that silliness, is it's actually in our bylaws. The lawyers stuck it in there, and it's because a number of 501c3 corporations, 501c6, which is what we are, they wind up with becoming morbid groups where they just continue to exist on paper and they never have an annual meeting. It's rather silly for us because we meet every month. In fact, we meet about 4, 5, 6 times a month, and so it's just a legal requirement that we follow. So with that, we're ready for our main speaker, our main presentation of the evening, Robert Citek, who has been a member of this group for, well over a decade. Robert no longer lives in St. Louis, but he still joins us remotely, and we're always happy to have him as an attendee, or as tonight, a speaker. And he's going to give us a gentle introduction to Git. So I'm going to turn it over to Robert. We hope.
I'm showing Robert is still being muted. Now he's
There we
unmuted.
go.
There we go.
All
Yes.
right. Thank you, Gary, and thanks everyone else for attending and joining here today. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. 1 second. All righty. It should be easy, right?
It's down at the bottom. It's to the right of the little red telephone.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, yeah, sorry about the video. My video camera isn't working. And as Gary mentioned, well, let me try this sharing first.
We're seeing something.
So far, so good.
Is it working?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
What? I don't see what you see. So what do you see?
A big black screen.
Does it say?
Apparently, it's your browser window for the Jitsi connection.
Yeah, so you're looking at we are looking at your X window that shows us, the black screen and the Zoom layout or the Jitsi layout.
Okay, that is not helpful. Let me try again. Let's try that.
There we go.
Ah, now we've got something else. Now we see
Command line.
green command line prompts.
Oh, really? Okay, good. That's what I'm hoping you see.
All right.
Let's see. So if I type that, it clears the screen.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Get a listing of files. Okay, great. Unfortunately, I can't tell that that's what's being shared. Let's try something else. Do you see now a browser?
Yes, we do.
All righty, great. So so I'm going to do a little gentle introduction to Git, and the basis for what I'm doing this is this book called Pro Git, and it goes into an enormous amount of detail of Git, but it starts off fairly simple. And,
Robert, could you enlarge a couple times?
Sure. Let's try this.
Good.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Much better.
Excellent. This is kind of the basis, but it's not the only basis I use. There's actually a really nice video tutorial, and of course, there's lots of really nice stuff that's out on the internet that goes over it. I'm going to give my particular twist on it. Some of the graphs I like from some places that I think are better than others. I think some places get, for example, the YouTube video that I found, I think does a better job of explaining some things than the Pro Git book. And then of course I'm going to kind of throw in my own perspective on a few things of how they work. So what I'm hoping is that by the end of this, you'll have at least enough of a basis to hop into this book and, how would you say, go from there. Take it to the next level. We're not going to cover everything in the book. There's just no way. For two reasons. Number one is we don't have enough time, and number two is I don't know everything that's in this book. It's one of those things where I use Git to do what I need to do, and there's a lot of things that Git can do that I don't need to do. So we'll cover the stuff that I'm familiar with, and if there's more stuff that you guys have questions, please do interrupt. I will do my best at answering, and if I don't know, I will simply say I don't know. As usual, I usually preface most of my talks with saying, don't believe everything I say for a number of reasons. Number one is there are things that I will explain in a simplified way that are not entirely true, but they're good enough for the explanation. An example I like to give is when you go outside in the morning, you can see the sun rise to the east and it sets in the west. And we also know that how would you say, more accurate representation is to say well, gee whiz, the Earth is spinning. But we don't say, oh gee whiz, the Earth is spinning in such a way that you can now see the moon on the eastern horizon. We simply say sunrise and sunset. And so that's what I'll be doing with Git as well, as I'll try to explain things in my vocabulary. May not be 100% correct. It will not be 100% correct, but it will get the point across. The other reason why I say don't believe everything I say is I misspeak. I give the example of east and west. Sometimes I'll switch them. Call me on that. These accidents happen. The third reason is Git actually has undergone several different versions. There are some commands that used to work or worked in a particular way that now they do things a bit differently, depending on how you install it, whether you're using Windows or Mac or version 2.1 versus 2.25 and so forth. And of course, the other thing is there's things are constantly changing. Even the things that I am correct absolutely right now, they may not be correct in a month or two from now, or when you start to play with it. So if you have any questions, please call me out on it, and I'll try my best to answer to clarify or to answer the question. Like I said, this walkthrough is based on ProGit. I think it does a reasonably good job of getting things. And my flow is what I'd like to do is I'm going to start off with a quick how-to. Then I'm going to go back and kind of fill in the blanks, give you a little bit of background. Then I'm going to jump back into the how-to. Then I'm going to explain a little bit more of the the theory and stuff. And I'm going to kind of do that oscillating model back and forth. In that way, at least you can right away get your hands on and try things out. I don't have slides, and I didn't, I created notes and what have you, but I have not put it together in a markdown format, which is what I was hoping to do, but unfortunately ran into some technical issues where I couldn't do it as the way I wanted it to do. So, but eventually I'll take this presentation and put it up on my Git site or GitHub page, and you can then have all the links to the book, to the videos, and of course the materials that I used for the presentation. So with that, I'm going to get started. So, so here we go. Just a little background of what you're looking at here. This is just a terminal window. And of course, a few months ago, I gave a presentation on Docker. And so rather than kind of muck up my environment with, some of the stuff that I want to do with Git, I actually created a Docker container that runs Git. And the advantage of this, at least for me, is that I can blow it away and restore it, and it, within a Docker container, it doesn't mess up my environment. That's what I'm doing. And the commands that I use to create that Docker environment, I will also put on the presentation. So with that, let's get started. So let's imagine you want to create a project. What we're going to do is we're just going to go and type in a few commands. I'm not going to show you how to install Git. Like I said, that information is in the Docker commands to create the Docker container. And there are many different ways to install it if you're on Mac or Linux or Windows. And yes, Windows also has Git with it. So I'm going to just create a directory real quick. That already is there, but that's okay. There's the directory, Git project, and created a temp folder as well. And then I'm going to come on. Uh-oh. Oh no. 1 second, my keyboard is falling apart. There we go. And are you still seeing the terminal window?
Yeah, except you don't have a cursor in there. There you go.
Yep, we still see it.
Still see it? Okay, great. Yeah, I heard Lee talking, but I didn't quite hear what he said. So here we go. We're in the project, and of course, nothing too exciting, right? This is standard Unix commands. We're going to look at the directory. There's nothing in it, and we're going to do our first Git command, which is to initialize the directory, right? And what it does is it does that. It initializes an empty Git repository. We'll talk about what that is a little later on, in a folder called .git. Now, what that means is it's basically hidden. So I'll use the ls-la command, and we can see it. There it is. You can see the actual directory tree using the tree-a, so it sees everything. And it has all this wonderful stuff in it. It's got head and branches and configs and the hooks and objects and refs. Most of the stuff we're not going to cover. But this is what it does, that initial Git. And we'll come back to what you can do with it. One of the other things I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just create a little copy of this. Like that. So I'm just gonna create a little rsync backup. Boom, I've got it. And we can see that, at least for now, there's no difference between the current Git folder and the backup copy that I made. I'm going to modify, or actually I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to configure my Git environment. For that I'm going to tell it who I am, or rather, excuse me, I'm going to tell Git what email address to use for who I am. And this is important for doing what are known as commits later on. And I'm going to give it my name. And we can see these things. Oops. We're going to look at the Git status. What does Git status say? Well, basically, it's empty. You're on the branch master. We'll talk about branches later on. There's no commits yet. We'll talk about commits very shortly. And there's nothing to commit. So this is the basic, here you go, blank project. Now let's actually pretend this is a project and we want to do something. We're gonna
I have to ask.
Fire away.
Does getting committed have anything to do with the psychiatrist? Never mind.
Oh man, you know,
If that was it, I would be so locked up it would be funny.
Never mind.
Yeah, there's a couple of videos. Just look at just do a Google search for Git and Hitler, and yeah, when Git first came out, there was a lot of, well, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know if backlash is quite the right word, but it was definitely it definitely did things differently than other version control systems. And,
Hitler parody.
yeah, Hitler parody. Yeah. And you know, it's in, how would you say that the audio is all in German, which has absolutely nothing to do with Git, of course, but the subtitles are kind of funny if you read along. And that was kind of the initial reaction to Git from a lot of people who weren't kernel developers, maybe even some kernel developers. I don't know. But we're going to start off with just creating a file. In our
Robert, could you make the text on the screen bigger?
Absolutely. Is that better?
Definitely better.
Okay.
Yes, definitely better.
Definitely better. Great. I'll bring that up. Okay, so I can do a touch README, and of course, what does that do? That just creates the file. It's a 0 size file, and we now see it in our home folder. But now, when we actually look at our Git status, we'll see something change. Yes, we're still on master branch. There's no commits yet, but now we have something called untracked files, right? And we have, in essence, what this means is that we have a file that Git doesn't know about. It knows it's there, but it's like, I don't know, it's not being tracked, right? So if we want to track this, which is obviously what I assume we want to do, given that we're using Git as a version control system, we want to add it to what is known as the staging area. So we do this process called git add readme, or the file name. And now when we do a git status, now it says, aha, I know this is a new file. It can be committed, right? Right, it can be committed to the repository. And let's do that. Let's commit it. Say, yep, we like this file. We want to make sure that it is in our repository. We will do an initial commit. And in this way, oops, I just realized I got a typo. I don't want that name. I just want that. The -m is just an option that says you can give you need to leave a comment for the commit itself. If you don't use the -m option, it'll pop up your favorite editor, VI, Nano, VS Code, whatever. You can type in the comment and then save the file and commit the file, or rather commit the commits into the repository with the comment. So we're going to do that, and boom, we now have this thing that says, yep, master root commit. It's got this little funky 493 stuff. I'll explain what that is. It's a SHA. I'll explain what that is later on, and some information about the commit itself. I go back and we look at our git status. Clean. We're on the master branch. There's nothing to commit. There's no new files to add. We are basically in sync with the repository. So Look at our Git log, which is kind of a the information about the repository. Now has this. We have a commit with the SHA, with the full SHA. We got these references, head and master. And this is where it tells me who did it, which is me and my email address, the date, when it was done, and the comment, the initial commit. Right? So this is a little summary about what is in that particular commit. So I'm going to stop right here and ask if anybody has any questions. All right, I'll move on a little bit. So what is this stuff about, oh, I got to take this file, I've got to add it, and then I've got to commit it, right? And the reason why it is, and this is from the video, is there's actually 3 main portions, or how would you say, collections, if you will, collecting areas for Git, right? On the left-hand side, that folder, that represents your working directory. The middle circle, that represents what is known as the staging area, also sometimes known as the cache or the index. In the far right, that little cylinder, that represents your actual repository, right? So the common workflow is basically, oh, and there's one item here that isn't represented. There's a 4th part, actually, that's called the configuration, right? And that was the, when I put in my name and email address, that's something that's also stored by Git, right? So the basic workflow, which I just demonstrated, is you create a folder, which is what your working folder is, and then you create and modify files. A. B. You stage the changes with a git add. That means you take those files and you put it in the staging area. You then commit with a comment, right? Or it's also known as taking a snapshot, and that will actually take the commits that you have in the staging area and put it into the repository, and you do that with the git commit command, and then you repeat, modify or add, stage the changes, commit, modify, stage, commit, and so forth. You just repeat that. So let's go back to the command line. Let's look at our status so far. So everything's clean, nothing's out of date. Let's modify the file.
You may need to enlarge the screen again.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure. I can read it.
Yeah, I think it's the same, Stan, just jumping around.
Okay, thank you.
If anybody needs it bigger, let me know. I can do that. So normally, I'm gonna simulate a modifying file by just simply doing an echo with a redirect, right? But this could either be, you're typing something in VI or Nano, whatever your favorite editor is, and then you hit save, right? So here we go. We've got hello. We've got in the README. You can look at it, and yep, there it is. There's hello content. And now if we do a git status again, oh, guess what? Boom. We have modified the README file, and it's not staged, right? So what it means is, hey, Git can tell you that in your working folder you've made a change. It's not in this. It's not in the staging area, and it hasn't been committed, right? So we're going to want to now say, great, let's do that. Let's add it to the staging area. We add it to the staging area. We look at the status. It now tells us, aha, these are ready. These are staged, and it's ready to be committed. Right? It's a modified version of the README file that it had before. And if you're comfortable with that, you can then commit it again with a comment. Here we go. Git commit -m. I added hello to the README MD file, and boom, there we are. It's now committed. If you look at the status, everything looks good. And if we look at the log, we see we have 2 commits. So from the top down, we had one that was done at 2:03, and then before that there was one done at 1:58. Let's repeat that a few more times with a few more files. And I'll go a little bit faster this time. I'll do a bunch of them all at once. So just so you can see it, I'm creating a new file, just throwing the date into a file called file1. I'm adding it to the staging area, and I'm committing it with a comment. And I just realized that A shouldn't be there. Let me see the joy of doing this live. Let's try again.
Robert, which A are you referring to?
Oh, and the commit. The git commit, I had git commit -am.
Okay.
And yeah, it was an earlier version where I said, well, you know what, I don't really need that, but I want to be a little bit more explicit. So I'm actually doing the explicit. The first line, the date file, date arrow file1, I'm creating a new file. The git add file1 is I'm adding it to the staging area. And the third line is I'm committing it, right? That's the general pattern, right? You add or modify a file, you add it to the staging area, you commit it, and you just repeat that. Right? So here I'm doing 3 of them all at the same time, right? By the way, I'm using bash, and if you put curly braces around a collection of commands, it treats it as a single block. So we're going to do this, boom, and here we go. So it added file1, added file2, added file3. And if we look at our git log, do this up, we can now see the 3 files, the commits that have the 3 files. So it's read from the latest to from the youngest to the oldest, right? So the most recent change happened at top. Right, so we added file3, before that we added file2, before that we added file1, added hello to readme, and so forth. Right? So that's our log. Now I'm going to do another one of these.
Hey, Robert.
Yo.
There was a written question in the chat basically asking, is the repository a local database?
Oh, excellent question. And I will be answering that question soon. The short answer is yes. The long answer is that's an incomplete answer. And I'll be getting to that in a little bit. And I'm hoping we'll have enough time where I can actually show you some of the cooler things about Git. Oops.
This is Stan. I have a question. Yeah, you from top to bottom is the sequence. Can you reverse that sequence? Do you know?
Oh boy, I want to. You can.
Just a yes or no. You don't have to show. Okay?
The short answer is I don't know, but this is actually a good way to show you how to get help to find some of this information out, right? So this is the log command, and it has options. I don't see one. I don't see an option in here where it specifically says you can reverse things. So the short answer is using these options, no. The longer answer is you can modify the way the output displays. So you could literally have it, for example, appear on a single line, putting the date in a particular format that you like at the very beginning, and then simply pipe that information into sort and reverse. And so that would be a way to show the reverse of the log entries.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next month, Steve will be doing a presentation on how Git could be redone in EMACS, where you can exercise that option on never mind.
And yes, I'm not going to cover it, but I will mention that there are lots and lots of plugins for using Git. I would be amazed if EMACS didn't have a plugin for Git. VS Code and gosh, many other editors and IDEs have plugins for using Git and displaying things and using it in many cases in a much nicer and easier fashion than using it at the command line. The reason why I'm using it on the command line is everybody can have this. especially if they're using Docker, right? I can simply just say, here you go, here's the Docker, boom, rock and roll. It works very similar. In fact, I haven't found any differences of using Git on my Mac. What I don't know is I don't know anything about using Git on Windows. But I can't imagine it being that different. So, all right, let me just create another quick snapshot, which kind of goes back to the question someone else asked earlier about, is everything stored locally? This is kind of the background stuff that I'm going to do to show stuff. Oh, yes. So we have these 4 pieces, right? If I go back to the browser here, we should, hopefully on your screen, you can see the thing that says workflow. On the left-hand side, we've got the working folder, right? In the center, you've got the staging directory, and on the far right, you've got the repository. And of course, there's also a section called the configuration. And we can interrogate those, right? These are collections. So you can kind of think of them as, oh.
I don't think you're supposed to aim it at the light.
Robert, is that coming from you or someone else?
That is not coming from me.
Okay, somebody's got a microphone open.
Oh.
Television or something on in the background. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
That looks like it was Steve.
So going back to what I was saying is there's these 4 areas, if you will, within Git, or 4 environments, right? You've got your working tree or working folder represented in that blue folder. You got the staging area, which is this yellow circle, and on the far right, you've got your repository itself, which is a database, right? It's a collection of all your commits, and then there's also the configuration. Well, if we treat these collections as kind of like databases, standard CRUD operations work, right? So create, read, update, and delete. We've already seen how to create in the working folder. We've seen how to create in the staging directory, right? You do an add, a git add, and we know how to add to the repository. We do a commit, right? We'll get into the update, and we did an update as well, right? The same kind of thing we modified the file, right? Again, added it to the staging area and put it in the repository. Now, one of the things about the repository is I don't want to say it's an immutable database, but its main purpose is to be mostly an append-only database, right? You add things to it over time. Think of it as almost like a ledger that keeps a complete list of all the transactions that have happened over time. Now, there are ways to modify that, and you can rearrange it and stuff. I'm not going to get into that because that gets pretty hairy pretty quickly, but that can be done. But for basic usage, you can think of it as simply an append-only database. And since these things are, like I said, collections, and you can treat them kind of like databases, you can interrogate them, right? So you can do the R part of the CRUD, right? So let's interrogate some of these guys. And of course, if we're just in the working directory, it's just a folder, right? So all the normal stuff you can do. You can just ls-la. You can do tree, right? You can do find if you want to do that, right? So and here we are showing a bunch of stuff that's in the Git folder, but maybe we just do find that, and we see just the files that are not that are available. We can also look at the staging area, right? And with that, you use the git ls files, and those are the files that are in the staging area. The git readme, the file 1, the file 2, and the file 3. I've seen it represented in many different texts, and then the video actually does a pretty good job of explaining this. When you add things or remove things from your working directory, or excuse me, when you commit things to the repo, many places suggest that things are removed from the staging area, and they're not. They stay in the staging area. The staging area is kind of like a copy of the last commit that you did in the repository. And that's important later, and we'll see this later on when we do diffs. Right? We can actually say, well, gee whiz, what's the difference between my working directory and the staging area? What's the difference? What do I have different in my staging area versus my repository? And so that's why things are actually kept in the staging area. And of course, we can interrogate the repository itself. And this git log is just one of several commands we can use. But this is just going to show you the initial stuff. And then, of course, we can also interrogate our configurations, right? So config list, and we can see that we got a core repository format, all this other wonderful stuff, and then you can see the two things at the bottom where it says the user email is my email address and the name is my name, and those are those configuration commands that I did in the very beginning, right? There are many other things that you can configure, and there are actually 3 different configuration environments. There's a system level, which is everybody on that system inherits those configurations. There's a user level, and then there's the local level, which is the specific to that repository. I did it just for the local level. In fact, if we look at my history, I spell correctly. And I use grep. We can see that I use the local, right? So local username and user email. So those are kind of the form terms. Yeah, go ahead.
So this basic list function or list option after config, we were here when you put in the username, when you put in the user email. So there are 3 other things there, which obviously, since they're the 3 default things that came up at this point, should we be, why are these important to us? File mode and bear and format version.
The short answer is I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the simple answer. They're important for the way Git operates, and those are set by default. There are ways to modify things, and I'm trying to remember. It's not file mode, but there's one that you can set called auto CRLF. I think it's auto CRLF. I'd have to look it up. But in essence, what it allows you to do is you can configure these things so that if you're working on a Linux or a Mac, right, the end of line is simply a /n, right? And so when you commit things, it goes in as /n. But let's say you're also, there are times when you work on a Windows box. Well, Windows likes to put in the /r/n, right? And so you got a character return and a line feed. So when the files come out of Git, if you set that option in a particular way, it'll automatically take line feeds and turn them into DOS format. And then when a person's working on a Windows machine and they commit it back into the repository, it removes the carriage return, right? So it turns it into just a /n. So that we have consistency between people working on different systems that use different conventions for end of line. And there are many other things you can do with these, with configuration. But yes, these are just the defaults that Git provides. You can override them. Again, if you really wanted to go into the nitty gritty, the Git Pro book goes into that pretty well. Does that answer your question, Gary?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right. So we've covered create, we've covered update, we've covered read, right? So now let's move on to removing a file, right? So we've got to look at our folder structure. We're like, you know what? I don't like file 3. I'm going to get rid of file 3. I don't need file 3 in my repository anymore. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use the git remove file command. And we've now removed file 3, or have we? If we look at our git status, right, we can see that it says we have a change to be committed. If we look at our folder, we see that file 3 has been removed. And so Git has, one of the nice things about having this staging area is that it's a safety net, right? We have now removed the file from the working directory. We've removed it from the staging area. And if we're really sure we want to do it, as in we really want to remove it from the repository, we actually have to commit that change. And that's what we'll do now, right? So I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, yep, I don't want it anymore. Remove it. If we look at the status again, everything is good. If we look at our log files, at our repository log, look at the very top, there we go. We have removed file 3, and it's no longer in our repository. And I'm sure for those of you who've used Git for a while are cringing at the moment because that's technically not true. But I'll just leave it at that for now. So, oops. Look at this. Yep. There's our working folder. That looks good. We can interrogate our staging area. That looks good, right? The file 3 is no longer in our staging area, right? Let's do a different kind of modifying. We've modified the contents of a file, but we're going to do another modification where we can actually rename a file. And again, I'm going to look at this and I go, you know what? I don't like file 2. I want that B2B. So I'm going to move that and rename it from file 02 to file 02B. Right? Again, if we look at this, we look at the ls-la, we see that the file in the working folder has been renamed. If we look at our staging area, it has been renamed in the staging area. If we do a status, you realize, aha, yes, it's removed in those 2 areas, but we haven't committed it. We haven't effectively renamed the file in our repository until we commit. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to commit that now. So commit, and it's committed. You see our status, looks good. Look at the log, and sure enough, at the very top, look at that. Renamed file 2 to file 2B. All right, now, I mentioned this earlier. One of the things that we can do is, or one of the nice features about having these 3 different areas, right? The working tree, the staging area, and the repository, is that we can actually do differences between the 2, between the 3. We can actually do much more than that, but I'll just show you a brief introduction to the concept of a diff. Right. So let's create a little change. So here we are. We've created this change. Oops. We've appended world. So now my README file says hello world. I've made this change. We'll pretend it's this rather large change, and I realized, oh shoot, I gotta take care of something. I gotta go to a meeting. I gotta take this phone call. Gotta do something, right? And I leave it at that. I don't do anything. Go off, come back, sometime later, and I go, ooh, what was I doing? Right? And I can come into my project and I can say, well, the first thing I can do is I can say, whoa, what's my status? I say, aha, according to this, I've modified a file, but I haven't added it to the staging area yet, right? So that's good, but what did I do? I made a change, and it tells me what's changed, or excuse me, it tells me that the README file has changed. It hasn't told me what the change was, and for that I can use git diff. And what git diff will do is it will tell me the difference between my working folder and my staging area. And in this case, I've made a change to a single file, the readme.md file, and I see that originally I had simply hello, and now I have this addition represented by the plus sign of world. right? So the A slash and the B slash on that. In fact, let me do this. Let me bump it up a little bit to the screen. So at line 1, it tells me exactly what it's doing. It's doing a diff, and it's A, in this case, A slash, is a representation of what's in the staging area. And B is what's in my working folder. Right? That's what it's doing a diff between. And it's telling me at lines basically 5, 6, and 7, actually the rest of the lines, but in essence 6 and 7, it's telling me this is 6 is what was there, 7 is what is new. Right? So those are the changes. And I can now see what my changes were before I went off to the meeting or answered the phone call or whatever it was that pulled me away. Right? And I can look at this and I go, aha, you know what? I like that change, or excuse me, yeah, I like that addition. I'm going to add it to my staging area. And I add it, and I go, aha, great. I'm gonna keep working on this stuff. And boom, I get another phone call, right? And I go away, to answer the phone or the meeting or what have you. And I come back, and again, I know I've done stuff, but where am I? Again, get status to the rescue. If I can type. And now it tells me, aha, yes, you've got stuff in your staging area. Things have been modified, and it's ready to be committed. Do you want to commit it? And you don't know. It's like, well, I don't know. I don't remember what the changes were. I've got very short-term memory. So I do my diff again. And well, there's nothing different. And of course, it's like, well, yeah, duh. My working directory, and I can see that from my status, my working directory and my staging directory, or staging area, are identical. They're in sync already, so there is no diff. So how do I do a diff between the staging area and what's in my repository? And for that, we do a slightly modified version of the diff command, and we specify -- stage. This will tell us the difference between what we see in our staging area and the latest commit. So we do that, and we say, aha, here we go. Right? Again, in this case, A is what is the last commit that's in the repo, and B is what's in your staging area. You look at that and you go, aha, yes, I remember this now. Of course, I added this stuff. You know what? I don't want to add this. You realize, thank God that phone call came in, because now I get a chance to review this, and it's like, you know what? I don't like this. I'm going to remove this from the staging area. And how do we do that? And the hint is we can look at the status command. The status, what's nice is about Git is Git actually tells you if you want to unstage it, in other words, get it out of the staging area, simply type git restore -- staged and then the name of the file. So in this case, what we can do is we just type git restore -- stage readme.md, and it is undone. And we can see now that it is no longer in the staging area. Right? Stages are not staged for a commit. Right here. We've got the change. Git knows that it's modified in the working directory, but it is not modified. It is not staged. It is not ready to be committed. Let's say you realize, you know what? I just don't like that change. I'm going to actually modify it in my working directory. I can do this. I can go git restore, and again, git status tells me how to do this. Right? I can discard the changes that I made in the working directory. I can actually go back in time, and I can say git restore the README file. And now if we look at the contents of a README file, it's back to simply saying hello. Right? And if we look at our git status, everything's back to the way it was before we added the world file or the world text to the README file. So does anybody have any questions so far?
This is Ed.
Hey, Ed.
You made me remember me. So I got a question regarding what you just talked about, but also in reference to the RM command, right? So consider the following scenario. You've got some contents in the repository. You have staging, which is currently ahead of the repository. And you also have working, which is ahead of staging. Okay? With me so far? In other words, you've made some changes, you've added it, and then you made some more changes.
Yeah, let's do that.
Well, okay, wait. Let me finish my question first.
All right.
Okay, so now when I type get R, maybe I decided, I don't like that file or something or whatever, and I say get RM. Okay. Now I notice when I do that, you can see that it stages the RM, the actual command, right, in the staging. And then it performs the RM in the shell. You can see it do that, right? So when you do an ls, the file's gone, right? But then if you do a get status, it says files removed. But it hasn't been committed yet, right? So it doesn't do the RM yet in the tip of the repository. So my question is, what if you were talking about restore and all that stuff, right? What if you wanted to remove the file in the working directory if you just did an RM without putting git in front of it, and then somehow you could get it back out of staging? Is that possible? Or do you just want to use restore in that case?
Good question. Let's try it. That's the easiest way. So what you're saying is, we look at our git status, everything's in sync right across the working directory, the staging area, and the repo. You're saying we do something like this, right? So we add world to readme, right? And now if we look at our git status, we now see that we've modified readme, but it's not in staging yet. So let's add it to staging. It's ready to be committed. So now we have consistency. In fact, if we do a git diff, say that there's no difference between the working directory and the staging area. And now you're saying at this point, simply do an RM.
No. At this point, make some additional changes to the working directory.
To that file or something else?
To that file.
Okay. So let's do another one. Echo, foobar to. Oops. Yeah, you got that. Okay, great. Yeah. So I appended foobar to the README. We've got now, 3 lines: hello, world, and foobar. And if we do a git status, here's what we see. We see in the staging area, we've got a modified readme.md, and in the working directory, we've got an additional a modified readme.md. So we've got 2 changes, right? So the working directory is now ahead of the staging directory, which is ahead of your repo, right? That's
correct.
The scenario you described. Okay. And now you want me to what? Remove the readme?
Well, I want to know what happens if you do a get RM at this point.
I don't know. Let's try it. It's sufficient, but I honestly don't know. So if we do a git RM, get an error. The following file has stage content that's different from both the file and the head. And the head is the repository itself, the latest commit. If you really want to do it, you can do a force removal. Otherwise, Git's not going to let you do that. It's going to try to protect you. So that answers that question. That's what happens with the git RM. Now you also mentioned, what if I just do a manual RM? Is that right?
Right. If you did a manual RM at this point, could you restore you'll lose, I imagine, your previous modification, your last modification, but you'll be able to restore the stage one, right?
Let's do it and we'll find out. I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen, but yes. So we're going to remove the readme.md. right, from the local directory, right? And if we list the files, yep, it's gone. We got file 1, we got file 2b, and that's it. If we do a git ls-l files, in our staging area, we still have the README. We've got file 1 and file 2b. And if we do a git status, what does it say? It says you've got a commitment. Excuse me. You've got you've got a file that's in staged, and the file has been removed from the working directory. So now we want to try a git restore, right? So git restore staged, and I got to cut and paste. README MD. Didn't get an error. So what does that mean? No, it's gone. It's just, since it's been removed, it does not restore it from the staging area.
Right. So I've always done like a git checkout and then re-enter the data, but I don't know if that's a good plan.
But here's what's happening. It says what it's saying is, it says changes are not staged for commit, right? So it knows that you've deleted the README file. So we've done a git restore, right? Staged README, right? Now we can simply do a git restore in the README file. That's what the git status says. No complaints, and it's back in the working directory.
Right, and if you cat it, you get the staged copy.
It's the one that that was before that. It has a single file in it. Hello. So it pulled it. It got rid of it. Modified. How to say this? The file that we added into the stage had two lines in it, right? When we do the git restore staged, what it did is it restored it from the head branch and put it back into staging.
Oh, okay. So that wasn't what I meant to do. I just meant the original just git restore without the staged thing. So that would have, if you retry everything you just did, but this time leave off the -- stage.
Sure. So now we have oh shoot, that's not what we want. Do that, right? So add README, right? So git status. So we got the modified README. It's got 2 lines, hello and world. And now we want to add foobar to it. So now we have so now we have what we had before, right?
Right, and now just RM the README file.
Yep. So now it's gone. Right? And it says it's deleted. And what we want to do is we don't want to restore the stage from the repo, which is what the first line says, right? That's what the git restore -- stages. That's what it will do. It'll go to the repository itself and go to the last commit and say, okay, great, I'm gonna take that out of the repo and replace it. What we want is we want to take it from the staging area and restore it back into the working directory, which is what that last line is.
Right.
Come on. Let me just highlight here. This is what we want to do. So let's just do that git restore, right? And the file. It says changes to be committed. What do we have? We only have 2 lines, which is exactly what was in the staging directory.
Right. It's not going to protect you from shooting yourself in your foot if you're bound and determined to shoot yourself in the foot.
Yes. If you're bound and determined to shoot yourself in the foot, Git will not. You're absolutely right. I mean, if you really want to shoot yourself in the foot, do an rm-rf.git, and you'll definitely be shooting yourself in the foot for a lot of stuff. But no, good example of how these things work. Did everyone follow what Ed and I were going through, of where the different things were and how we restored?
Sort of.
Okay.
Yeah, it is complex, but it was a good walkthrough example. One way that it's been explained to me before in the past, as a kind of taking it out of the computer realm and putting it into physical realm. Imagine you went into work and the working tree is basically your file cabinet or your desk drawer where you have the papers you were working on. When you put them on the staging area, you took it out of the drawer, you put it onto the top of your desk, and now you're scratching up stuff and changing stuff on that paperwork on the top of your desk. And then committing it to the repo is basically you take the paperwork and you go put it on the boss's desk. And, now other people can get to it. And So that's another way of looking at what the different areas are, and whether or not you still have control of a copy of it. Think of it that way, and it gives you some idea where it might be.
Yep, that's pretty close for a good analogy. And Git actually does things a little bit differently, which are pretty cool. But that analogy is like all analogies. You stretch it to the end, and eventually they break. But for explaining things, I think that works pretty well. So I want to take a little bit of a pause here. We've seen now all the main. Would you say at least we've touched on most of the major functions, right? We can create objects in the 3 different areas, right? Or actually 4 different areas, but let's say the 3 main areas, right? The working directory, staging area, and the repository, right? We can read things. We can interrogate each of those, right? What's in the working directory? What's in the staging area? What's in the repo? At least to a limited extent. We can update things, and we've deleted things. And we actually went through an exercise of not only can we delete things, but we've actually touched on how to restore things, which is one of the really cool things about having a version control system, right? The whole point is in essence, you want to ask 3 questions. Who modified the project? When was it modified? And what was modified? And then use that information to say, let's go back in history to restore things out or try the things with the repo. That said, everything I've talked about so far assumes that you want or you need to use Git. And I'm actually going to convince you, and maybe I've done a little bit already, don't use Git. And this goes back, I remember years ago, maybe even decades ago at this point, there was an old saying that says, don't use C if awk will do. Don't use awk if sed will do. Don't use sed if grep will do. Don't use grep if cat will do. Don't use cat. And it's kind of one of these things where, yeah, you could do things in C, but if all you want to do is just, extract a couple of bits of information out of a file, do it in awk. You don't need to write a C and use a C compiler and, use make files and all that fun stuff. Just use awk, right? Use the tool that's appropriate for the task at hand, right? And so for a version controlling system, you really need to add yourself to 3 questions, which are already mentioned, right? Who modified the project? What was modified, and when was it modified? And if you don't need to answer those questions, either some or all of them, maybe you don't need to use Git. There's nothing wrong with the old adage, simply save early and save often. You're afraid you're going to lose your work, right? Well, in BI, hit Shift ZZ, exit out and exit back in, or colon W, or Command Command S if you're in some word processor or other editor or what have you. Just save it, right? There's absolutely nothing wrong with the save early and save often, right? If you do need to answer the question of, well, gee whiz, I need to know, I need to somehow track changes. We've all seen people do it. I see people in office settings do it all the time, where they simply just take the file name and they add on .vo1, make some more changes and add on .vo2, add some more changes, add vo3 and vo4 and so on and so forth, right? Yes, they get this big directory with all these different versions of the same file. Yes, it's redundant, but so what? It's simple. People understand it. People will look at that and instantly recognize what it is, right? if you talk to a lot of people and say, oh yeah, we're doing Git and we're doing Git commits, and we've got a staging area, and we've got these repos, and we've got these commits, and blah blah blah. Yeah, their eyes will glaze over. You know, so if you don't need to use Git, maybe the solution is don't use Git. You know, you don't have to use Git. That said, Git can do some pretty cool things, right? As you know, hopefully you've seen a little bit of that. And it's unfortunately it's Gary. How much time do we have?
Technically, we usually try and shoot for a close at about 9 o'clock, which would be in about 16 minutes. But
okay.
We can run a bit long. So if you're on a roll, go with it.
Well, there's a couple things I do want to cover, and as always, there's lots of things I want to cover, but just not going to happen. But one of the things I want to do is I do want to get into. We talked about the working directory, we talked about the staging directory, and there's really not much to them. The staging directory is just a list of the items of the last commit. The working directory is what you is. It's the working directory. You get what you see, right? But the repository itself is a rich source of information, and I'm gonna touch a little bit about like I said, you can interrogate it, but there's really a lot of really good information that we can interrogate. So let's do that, and I'll try to get into tags and branching, but I don't know if I'm going to make it. So let's look at the Git log real quick. Stan was asking a question about times and stuff. This may be a way to eventually get it. For sure, let's say we just want to look at the last two commits, and this is what this will do. We can say Git log, which will display everything, but we can say -2, and that will only display the last two log entries, right? We see commit number 31D, and then we see commit 5FE, right? But let's say we want some more information. We don't want to just know, oh, those are the last two commits, but and we see renamed file 2 and so forth and removed file 3. We actually want to do a diff, right? Well, there you go. We can actually now see the commit and the diffs that happen. And I'm going to actually go a little bit further. Let's go 4 to see some of the more interesting changes. So, the first commit, we can say we see all the metadata, and then we see a diff, right? It's simply a rename. The one before that, we see a diff is simply there's just new data, right? The file was removed. Let's see, commit 035, what is that? We added a file. File 2, we added file 2. Let me just, we didn't do anything exciting. But in essence, what you can see is you can see diffs in addition to the commits. So you can see what changed, or what the changes were from commit to commit to commit to commit. Right? That's one of the cool things. A slightly different format is to view the information rather compactly, right? And here it is, everything on, or every commit on each commit is on a single line, right? So we have 31D, then 5FE, 03, and so on and so forth, right? And we can see what those are. If we want to get a little bit more information, I don't know, for whatever reason, you feel the SHA is not long enough, there you go. You can see the full SHA. And we can get even fancy. We can do something like this, where we can do graph and all kinds of pretty things happen. We can now have a little bit more information. We have the abbreviated SHA, we have the references, we have the names, and then who did it and when, right? So we have the initial commit 49 minutes ago, we had hello to readme 44 minutes ago, and so on and so forth. In addition, maybe we just want to see what happened to single files, right? And we can see the diffs, right? So I can say git log -p, which will give me the diffs between each commit. And if I go --, I can specify an individual file. Maybe I'm just interested in seeing what happened to the readme.md file. And here we go. These are all the commits that affected the readme file. So it's not all the commits in the commit history, it's just those commits that affected the readme file. Right? So reading from the bottom up, we've got our initial commit, which simply created a file, and then we added hello. So we've got that plus hello file in there. This is really nice if you want to see what happens, how a file changed over time. So anybody got any questions on that part?
Steve Gozmes put something in the chat box.
Okay. Let me see if I can bring up the chat box.
Lower left-hand corner.
Yep, see? Some info you can save for later. Using git on window is horrible if you use the command prompt. However, when you install git, it also installs git bash, which you can open from a DOS prompt using git bash. Using the git bash shell provides a very Unix-like experience that I use for all command line operations, whether related or not. Steve, thank you very much. That is very good to know. And now I'm actually going to go back and answer Joe B's question. Is a repository a local database? And the answer is yes, sort of. And here's why. Here's why. Here we go. Traditionally, version control systems have been centralized, right? So if we look at things like CVS and Subversion and RCS and many other ways, and even the fact that the one that I just did or was explained to you of just typing in v1, v2, v3 on a file, that's centralized. It's one's place, right? If you want to work on a file, right, or on a project, you need to connect to that server or hop on a file system or get a copy of that file, check it out and work on it. And one of the big disadvantages back in the day is that when you check something out from the repository, you in essence created a lock on that file. And the reason why, that's why it was called checkout. The model or the paradigm they were using at the time was we're gonna have this repository act like a library, right? And so you check it out just like a book, and when you have the book, nobody else can read it, nobody else can do anything with it, right? And nobody can do anything with it until you check it back in, right? And that was kind of the earlier model that they used for version control systems. It's a centralized model. A decentralized model is a slightly a different version where some of the information is distributed in many places. You've got multiple local copies, but not everybody has a copy of the database. And then we have distributed.
Robert?
Yeah.
Could you blow up the size on that graph a little bit?
That is a good question. Let me see if I can do that. Let me see if I can find my pointer. There we go. Oh, there we go. Yep. How's that?
Thank you. Much better.
Oh, yeah. So going from left to right, we've got centralized, we have decentralized, where none of the nodes have a complete copy, but you have these intermediate nodes that do have copies of the database. And then we have the one on the far right, which is a distributed database. And Git, as well as Mercurial and a few others, fall into that category. It's a distributed version control system, a DVCS. And what that means is when you're working on your local copy in that Git, with the .git folder, you have a complete version history of everything that happened in that repository. When somebody else, we haven't talked about this, clones or copies the repository, they get a complete copy of the repository. So, for example, let's say you go to GitHub, which is a service that is based on Git, but provides many other things. You can go and do a Git clone or a Git fetch and get the and check out a project. And when you do that, you get everything. You have a complete copy. It is not a partial copy. It is not. It's not being checked out for you so that nobody else can work on it. No, you have a complete copy of that. So that is the model that Git works on. Going back to the repository itself and the commit tree or the commit history, this is a detailed version of it. For those of you who are really interested in, this is in ProGit in the towards the later chapters. It actually talks about all the details. But I want to go into a simplified version or simplified concept here, right? So what we're looking at here is we're looking at a very simplified commit tree. We've got commit 0, the initial commit, and then we have commit 1, commit 2. Time moves from left to right. C1, then C2, excuse me, C0, then C1, then C2. That's your commit history. But the actual repository itself, would you say the way it's implemented, is that a commit refers back to its parent. So C2 points to C1, C1 points to C0. It points to its parent. Right? So you have a complete chain, right? And this is, well, in this case, it's just a linked list of going from C2 all the way back to C0. Right? That little label there called master, that is the current point where you are at. Right? That's the current, that's the latest commit. And this entire linked list, C2, C1, C0, is called a branch. Right? And this happens to have the reference or the name master. Right? So what does that mean? Well, I can create other labels. And this one I can call ISS 53. It can also point to C2. And what it allows me to do is I can then modify. I can say, well, you know what? I want to use ISS 53 as my head. And I'm going to create a new commit, in this case C3, right, on the ISS 53 branch. And ISS 53 points to C3, which points to C2, which points to C1, which points to C0. Probably clear as mud. But let's see where this goes. This is a little bit more detail. What we're seeing here is the same kind of thing, except instead of C1, C2, C3, it actually has the SHAs of the commit. Right. So let's see what that actually looks like in detail. So now we know we have a linked list. Let's try this command. That's not really, this kind of gets it. So I'm showing you two commands. I'm showing you a show, I'm doing a git show branch all with as many as 100. And then I'm also doing a git log with one line output. And they are basically the same information in two different formats. Right? If we look at the git log, we've got a complete SHA, the 31D, blah, 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 blah. And then we have what is known as the reference, the head, which points to master, right? And the comment that goes with it. Master is the name of the current branch, right? And we can reference any of the commits in one of many ways. One of the ways is we can say, you know what? Commit 31D16, that is the current commit. It's also known as the head. It's also known as the master. Commit 53E75 is a commit. It's also known as master caret, which you can see from the very top. So for example, I can do this. I can say git log, and I can look at a single commit. If I can get my pointer over here.
I'm sorry, Robert, what was that term? Master caret?
Caret.
Caret?
Caret.
That little thing above the 6.
Yeah. Thank you, Ed.
Okay.
I'm doing this wrong. Oh, right. Let's see if this works. That works. So what I'm doing here, let me just go to the screen real quick. Let me number these real quick. So in line 2, you have a master and then a caret. So the little ticky line, or the thing that's above the 6. That refers to the commit just before the one you were at, right? And that's useful because you may want to see, well, gee whiz, what did I commit? And you can say, this log command, I did a git log and gave it the hash and specified only one. But I don't want to type that hash. That hash is really long, and maybe I don't know it. Sometimes it's just simpler to say git master -1. Or I can say git master caret. And that'll give me the one before the current one. Or I can say, I want to look at something that's 5 back, or I don't know if I got 5 back. 5 back. I can say master ~5. And just show me that one commit. I can also show a P and say, well, what did it actually do? It's I added hello, and there's the diff, right? So if you want to know information about a specific commit, you can use the git log command and then specify the particular commit. And the way you can specify the particular commit is you can give it the hash, and the hash is unique to every single commit. So that's guaranteed not going to change anywhere, right? It's like an absolute path, right? But it's an absolute path that never changes. But you can also use relative terms. And in this particular case, git log master ~5 got me to that commit 8065DE9. Right? So these are ways you can actually specify where you want to be in a particular commit. Yeah, we just don't have enough time to. If I get into branches and merges, that's at least another half hour of talking about stuff.
Hey, Robert.
Yo.
Next month, Wednesday.
Let me check my calendar. I might be. Yeah. So we can
thank
go
you.
more detail.
Thank you, Lee. Hey, so more specifically back to what you were just saying. So it is would the file name master -1 as all one thing be the same as master ~1?
Oh, excellent question. Let's try it. I hate to say the answer and not try it. So let's give it a shot. So you're saying instead of using a caret, can I go ~1?
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Okay.
Here's a 1. I do that. Can I do ~0? Well, that just is that kind of redundant for just saying, well, that's master. And the answer is yes. I can do that.
Okay.
What else could I do? Could I? We see there's a reference called master, but we also see there's a reference called head. Can we do that? The answer is yes. So here's, and let me see if I got the picture for that. I don't have a good. All right, I'll just tell you that in the ProBook, you can actually have multiple. If you're looking at the screen right now, basically we've got a commit history C0, C1, C2, with the arrows pointing backwards, and we have 2. I'll call them labels, or more correctly, references. One is master, one is ISS 53. There's also one called head, and head is where you are currently at, right? So for example, if you are on the master branch, in other words, what that means is that head is pointing to master, right? That is where you currently are at. And so when you say I want to commit something, or I want to do a diff between staging and the repository, what Git does is it says, okay, great. What is head pointing to? There's a little bit of nuance in the sense of master actually points to C2. Head will actually point to another reference. So it's like a pointer to a pointer, right? And that's kind of how it does things. The other thing that I really would like to get into, if I've got just a couple minutes, is a little bit about this. And this is not the best way I want to explain things, but it's kind of captures everything. When we talk about commits, a commit is a bunch of things all rolled up into something, right? A commit points to a tree, right? And think of a tree as simply a folder, right? And that folder contains these objects, right? And in this case, if we look at the very first commit on the very bottom, it contains the tree, which is a folder, and that tree contains the the file called test.txt. And with the commit, it has a comment called version 1, right? When you create a commit, let's say in this case the second commit, it takes. Actually, let me go back to the first commit. When it creates the first commit, it takes the contents of the file, takes some metadata and stuff, and does a SHA on the contents, right? And that content, or excuse me, that SHA is what is then used for the commit. That's where that FD, in this particular example, FD4, F4, FC comes from. It comes from the content itself, right? You do any change or anything, again, it bundles up the content and everything else, creates a SHA, and when you generate that second commit, not only does it point to the content, which is that arrow going to the right and pointing to the tree, that is the content, it also points to the previous commit, the commit that it came from, right? So that is what a commit is. It's a combination of some metadata. It includes who created it, when it was created, your email address, the contents of the file, the permissions and read write permissions, all that kind of fun stuff. All that information is kept within that commit, and then it has a pointer back to the parent, right? And that's how it builds these linked lists, right? So that gets into a lot of detail, and way more detail than I actually have time into tonight. But what it allows you to do is, going back to the diff command, is you can then do a diff between anything that has a SHA. So if you want to do a difference between the third commit and the second commit, you can go git diff 1A410E space CAC0CA, and you can see the diff between the two. If you want to do a diff between the third commit and the first commit, you can specify the SHA of the third commit, and you can specify the SHA of the first commit. Off on the left-hand side, what we've got is we have references. Those are just nice little handles, little labels that point to particular commits. And so instead of saying, well, I want to do a diff between 1A410E and CAC0C, you can see how SHAs are not very useful, right? They're not very user-friendly. You can instead say, I want to do a diff between master and test. And Git knows, oh, those are references. Let me look those references up. Aha, master points to the third commit. Test points to the second commit. I'm going to do a diff, and here it is. Those diffs are then used for in the future, when we do branching and stuff. That's how it does merges, right? It says, aha, I'm going to look at this particular commit, I'm going to look at this particular commit, do a diff between the two, and figure out how to merge those two together so that we now have a single path again. But we'll leave that for another time. Does anybody have any questions?
I'll point out that in the chat, Steve Gomez added a comment of giving a little trick that he's used before in the past. So I'll leave it to you all to read that, and if you want to comment on it, or if you just want to copy his trick, go for it. Other comments, questions?
Just that again. I've got a comment.
Uh-oh.
Oh, not him again. God. Wish he'd shut the hell up. Okay. Okay. So, you mentioned about the those references like head and master as just being like names or pointers to blobs or actual SHAs or whatever that exist in the repository. Well, so the one thing that was the aha moment, because I came from Subversion, and a lot of us might have remembered CBS and SCCS and Subversion and all that stuff before that, and there was a lot of like weirdness with branching and tagging and merging and shit like that, right? And the aha moment for me with Git was when I had first learned about Bitcoin and blockchains, like how they work, right? And you just mentioned it earlier. You said you've got this backward pointing linked list, right?
Yep.
So you got like the tip of the list, and that's
With a SHA.
It's some SHA, and then there's a pointer back to the previous one, and then a pointer back to the previous one, and then you just have these other things like master and head that point at that tip. Well, the thing that was the aha moment for me was that simply if you just create a branch, right, all you have done in Git is added a new pointer. That's it. I literally told you all you need to know about branching.
Yeah.
And the branch, so let's say I called a branch called ed, right? This is my ed branch, right? And where's it currently pointing? It's currently pointing at master. And head is currently pointing at ed, right?
Actually, real quick, just minor detail. If you create a branch, it actually isn't pointing, and you're at head. Head is pointing to master. Master is pointing, and I've got a diagram on the screen that says commit to. When you say,
oh right, we haven't switched to the branch yet.
No, well, hold on. If you create the branch,
right.
Yes, you're actually not pointing at master, but you are pointing at C2, and there is a difference. And the reason, and the distinction between it is the difference between a direct reference and an indirect reference, right? Unfortunately, that I don't have a diagram on it on the screen. Head points to master. If you then modify master to let's say point to C1, right? Back to C1. Head will still point to master, and master will now point to C1, and so therefore indirectly head will be pointing to C1. But if you create a branch, and all you're creating is this, like you said, you're creating a pointer. Even though what Git does is it looks up what master is pointing to, and then points the branch to that. So now your branch is now pointing to C2.
Yeah.
If you modify master, that's okay. Your branch is still pointing at C2.
Correct. Okay, right. And I just wanted to say that. And then if you switch to that branch, then head is pointing at that same as that branch right there.
And that is exactly it. What Ed just said is 100% right. When you create a branch, all you're doing is you're creating a pointer to a particular commit in a commit history. And when you switch that branch, all you're doing is you're updating the head label or the head reference. Instead of head pointing to master, head now points to ed. Head is not pointing to C2 itself. Head is pointing to the reference ed. And so that's how when you then go in and create a new commit, basically a commit is, I think it's 3 steps if I remember correctly. Number 1 is it takes everything that's in the staging area, creates a tree, which is creates a tree, which is basically a folder with everything that you're going to put into it, right? It calculates a SHA. It looks up what is head, sees what it's pointing to, what commit it is pointing to. It then modifies the current commit to point to what head was indirectly pointing to, and then it modifies head or excuse me, it modifies what head is pointing at, right? So let's say head is pointing at ed. It now points ed to the latest commit. And I think they got a diagram of this in multiple steps in the Git Pro book. But basically it's those steps, right? Create the commit, update, and then just update pointers.
Question.
Yeah.
Does that branch label always point to that C2? Always from then on?
Absolutely not. And that's what we were getting at is by when you create a new commit, right? If head is pointing to, and I'll use the example that's on the screen, right? We've got master, we've got ISS 53. If the head reference was pointing to ISS 53, and you created a new commit, both of those pointers will get updated. ISS 53, excuse me, yeah, two things get updated. The commit will now point to C2, and ISS 53 will now point to the new commit. Let's call it C3, right? So C3 points to C2, ISS 53 will point to C3. Because your head was pointing to the ISS 53. What hasn't changed in that example is master. Master is still pointing at C2. And that's how you can get these branches happening. Yeah, here you go. Here's an example. If you look at the screen, this is after a new commit has been added or appended to the ISS 53 branch. ISS 53 is now pointing to C3, C3 points to C2, but master is still pointing to C2.
Right, and if you switched back to master, added some changes, and then committed it, you'd have master and that new head there pointing at let's call it C4, for example, right?
Yep.
And that would be where you would start to verge or diverge, I should say, between head and IS, whatever that number was, right? 53. So now you've got two separate strains that are kind of running in parallel, and they could have different changes because different people are working on them.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And here's the fun part. Let's look at just this particular picture here, right? We've got commit 0, 1, 2, and 3. Master's pointing to C2. ISS 53 is pointing to C3. If I can remove the branch. I can delete a branch. So I can delete that ISS 53. What happens to C3? And the answer is nothing. It sticks around. And now what you have is you have a dangling commit. I think that's what it's called. Dangling commit? Dangling.
Or an orphaned branch.
Orphaned, yeah, maybe that's what it's called. I'm getting confused between two different things that are very similar. But in essence, what you have is you have a commit that nothing is pointing at. And that happens, right? And so what you can do is over time when these things, as these things accumulate, Git will actually go through and do some garbage collecting. It will look for commits that no longer have references to them and will clean them up. But now we're getting really deep in the weeds, and I don't want to bore you guys. So with that, well, unless anybody else has any questions, I want to say thank you everyone for participating, and thanks for the great questions and comments, and thanks Stan and Gary and Lee and I don't remember who else was on the email thread who invited me. So thank you very much.
Hey, thank you very much, Robert. It's always a pleasure to have you speak or be at the meeting. We miss you not being here in town, but this is almost the next best thing. By the way, for some of you with memories, Robert was a key element of the official SLUUG float trip team, which used to go down various rivers. I believe the name of our official float trip team was called the Floating Points, if I remember correctly. But
grown.
Oh,
That's bad, Gary.
Very bad, yes.
What was your math really horrible?
Yes. I do have two questions I meant to ask at halftime, so I'm going to quickly ask them. First off, with respect to tonight, Stan, you may be more of an expert being able to read a show of hands. So that show of hands button in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, maybe you can use that. How many of you came tonight specifically because Git was I want to see Git. Let's see a quick show of hands of how many of you are Git people. And Stan, is that something you can get a count of?
I'm trying to look at this.
While Stan is trying to look and count, yeah, I did see a number of people pop
1,
up saying
2,
they'd like
3, 4, 5. Counting me, 6.
All righty.
I got 8, Stan.
Okay. 1, 2. 1, 2,
So they
3.
saw them keep popping. Gary, put your hand up and leave it up.
Okay.
1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 and add me for 9.
Add me for 10 because I don't know where that button is.
Oh, you got it.
Okay. Am I still up, Lee?
Yeah, it keeps popping up and down.
Right now I'm holding it. So is it up right now?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And if I let go, okay, did it go down?
No, it didn't.
No, it didn't. Okay. Okay. So apparently it's a tap and it goes up, tap if it goes down. Okay.
Or hover. If you hover over, it'll go down.
Oh, is it down for me now?
No, I was looking at mine.
Okay. How about mine? Is it up or down?
Now it's down.
Okay. Well, hover didn't do. Well, maybe it is hover. Let me put it back. Is it up?
No, just hit gallery view. You can see it.
Oh, okay. Good point. Good point. Okay. Well, anyway, that was one of my questions. Let's see. The other question I was asked. This is an odd question, but there's the IBM mainframe operating system called VSE. It's an oldie. I mean, it was popular in the 1970s. I think Lee suggested to me the other day or yesterday that it may have come out in 1965. So it ain't bleeding edge technology.
Wikipedia says 65.
Okay. And it's not very prevalent today. It's obviously been displaced by a number of things, but there's still a few companies that run it in a VM. And that's why I've been asked to bring up this question. I've been contacted by somebody that has had both of their sysadmin people. One of them has caught an extremely serious case of COVID. The other one had to go in for some surgery. And so they're finding themselves without the benefit of having a sysadmin. The sysadmin was both taking care of Linux, and the reason why I've given that crazy preface is his other duty was to take care of the old VSE. So if you know of anyone who has experience with VSE and is also a bit of a Linux file, let me know, because I'm being asked if any of our membership might be willing to at least do some consulting until they get somebody on their feet and back in the office. It may turn into a long-term or permanent job if that's what you would wish, but that's up for you and them to negotiate. So. Any other? Oh, there's somebody who
And contact you off list.
Yeah, they can send it to my email, Gary at SLUUG, or you can also get me at Prez at SLUUG. If anyone wants to make a comment about VSE right now, they're more than welcome to do it. You can also mention it in the discuss list, which, by the way, once again, if you're not a member of the discuss list, it's not very high volume. I think right now, recently, I don't think we've hit 10 postings a week. So this is not an email list that's going to swamp your mailbox. I think, last year, I don't know if we ever got more than 15 in a week. But So it's relatively low volume, but it's a nice place to go and basically do what we do here at the meetings. Just bring up a question that intrigues you, and maybe you get a few answers. So, other questions, either pertaining to Robert's presentation or and quickly while you're all thinking, Dan, what was the count of those raised hands? I've already forgotten.
I think we had 8, Gary.
8, okay.
No, it was 10. It was 10.
Okay, so. Alrighty. God bless you. And God bless you again. And again.
Sorry.
Speakers are working.
Okay.
Oh, man.
Well, I tell you what, since I don't hear anybody chomping at the bit to ask any specific questions, I know there's a few people who have either kids to put to bed or they want to go hit the hot tub, or so we'll kind of say that okay, we're done with the official part of the meeting. If it's okay with Stan or Lee, we'll just leave the session open for a while. This kind of goes back to when we were meeting at the pizza parlor or some other restaurant bar, and we could at least sit around and kind of chit chat afterwards. So we'll leave this open for a while, and 10 o'clock, 10:15, whatever, and yeah, if you want to keep chatting, go right ahead. Otherwise, we'll try and meet again next Thursday or next month or at one of our other meetings throughout the period of the month. So thank you all very much for coming.
Hey, Gary.
Yes, sir.
Just throw out a comment here. I just looked. EMACS has 57 built-in Git commands.
Ooh. Wow.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to stop the recording.
All righty.
Oh, boy. At this point, I'm going to sniffle. God.